So thank you for joining 9:05 p.m. Tuesday, October 7th, 2025. This is technically episode 1370. If you've been following my channel, you're the type of person that knows you're not going to get the straight truth, or at least even an attempt to get the straight truth from a mainstream media or most alt media channels. You know that there's no such thing as loud censorship. When people are censored, they are censored quietly. They are made to go away quietly with little or minimal fanfare, or they are censored, or they are basically replaced or hijacked. In other words, other people will be paid to do similar work and then smear it or do it poorly, etc., and then those other channels will get promoted. So you understand by now how censorship works. You know that it takes many years of practice as a researcher to get to this point, and you know that there's nothing better to prove someone than a track record. And you probably also know that most of the main narratives that have been pushed out there are phony baloney, and the only way to understand when it comes to the United States history the last 25, 30 years, if you don't understand the massive amount of connections, and it's not just connections, but how September 11th and COVID-19 are part of the same agenda and the same warfare, you won't understand what's going on here. You probably also know that you've seen the coverage of Curt Weldon in some of my recent videos. Yesterday I said I didn't see at any point at that time in putting out an assessment. Right now I have enough evidence that Curt Weldon is a certified liar and deceiver. I don't know exactly why it is, and I assume that everyone in major elected offices in the United States has to deceive in one way or another, and sometimes, there might be the little noble lies, and, I'm not looking for some strict, unattainable goal of honesty and transparency, but these interviews that he's had with Tucker Carlson, the more you dig into them, the more you learn, the more bad you realize this is. It's particularly bad because, look, we know that much of the two-party system in the United States is a fabrication. It's a construct, and they want people, brother against brother, going to war with each other. I get it, okay? I get it. But when you deceive as being a friend on one of those two sides to the people who might feel as though they ideologically belong there, there's something even far more insidious and disgusting about that. I don't care how many fireman hats and sweaters and shirts and shout-outs that you wear, because, after all, the totality of the lies starting all the way back in 9/11 did lead to something which, in my opinion, well, not just my opinion, it is technically the largest loss of life event in the history of the United States of America, the drug epidemic, which is also tied into all of this. But not to get too deep down into the weeds there. As I showed yesterday, Curt Weldon is doing the most fantastic dancing of his life, not to talk about any references to the Germs book, not to talk about his knowledge and involvement in biological weapons protections and suitcase nukes, small nuclear devices, advanced knowledge that those things could be at play, and so on, and is throwing everyone off on this wild, totally wrong narrative with this Lieutenant Schaefer and General Flynn and hijackers and this and that and Able Danger, and I don't even know the whole of it, but what I know is what he's saying and his enthusiastic bashing of the 9/11 Commission report, however, not mentioning this, saying that people had advanced knowledge of hijackers, which would be quite interesting if there were hijackers, but on September 10th, 2001, remember, September 10th, 2001, Senator Joe Biden then, told everyone about biological weapons and bellies of planes flying in the buildings and creating a new second military, a United States Department of Homeland Security, and anthrax and smallpox, and how much of a waste of money it was thinking about missiles. It seems as though Curt Weldon, as head of the Defense Armed Services Appropriations Committee, probably did more to sink money going into the missile treaty. Not that it was necessarily being well spent, by the way, than most people could possibly imagine. And as I showed yesterday, the timing of his being ousted, etc., bad. There's one clip in here, and this is going to be a 3-hour video. And the 3-hour video is mostly going to be a playback of this 2006 Able Danger intelligence sharing meeting. It's September 21st, 2005. And as you can see at the table there is Curt Weldon, September 2005. And what you need to know is that during this meeting, he is actually very friendly and cordial with Joe Biden. So he's talking with Joe Biden about having all of this insight about Able Danger and hijackers and neocons and this and that. And he's talking to Joe Biden, who openly said on September 10th, 2001, more suspicious things than anyone. And the timing couldn't possibly have been worse. And he doesn't seem to have a care in the world about it. Meanwhile, as we also showed yesterday, there's other things involved in the ecosystem. There's the whole whistleblowers being protected, and the outing of a CIA deep stater, Valerie Plame, etc. I didn't know that one of the lawyers involved in that was a guy named Mark Zaid, Z-A-I-D. Now, that name may not ring a bell to a lot of people. Mark Zaid is a known enemy of Donald Trump. Mark Zaid is also a key longtime ally of Meryl Nass in protecting U.S. military from taking old anthrax vaccines. Not the experimental ones, just the old ones. Isn't that kind of crazy? Isn't that just kind of wild? It's almost as if the germs book, where the very first sentence is taking anthrax vaccines. You know, the book by Judith Miller that he doesn't want to talk about. But it gets worse because Mark Zaid is also in this book. And Mark Zaid is also there. As a matter of fact, if you scroll through it, you'll see that this Curt Weldon is directly behind Mark Zaid for like an hour watching him. They're the only two people in camera. So he's good with the guy that wants to make sure the military is seen as bad for considering the old anthrax vaccine. He's good with the big Democrat, John Murtha, who created the Cancer Research Center, the Winber Center, the Chan Soon Sung Center, where Robert Malone has his affiliations. He's good with Joe Biden, who is talking about anthrax and smallpox and planes with anthrax flying in the buildings and suitcase nukes on September 10th, 2001. As a matter of fact, the only people he really seems to have a problem with are individuals who are getting in the way of the U.S. military being used for experimental gene therapy. And instead of anyone realizing that, everyone is running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Maybe that's the bad analogy, considering we're talking about Middle Eastern hijackers here. But like talking about hijackers. No useful, fruitful conversation whatsoever. And Mark Zaid also, just going through the videos here on C-SPAN, okay, Mark Zaid, holy cow. Just like I said, Mark Zaid is also involved in the CIA leak investigation with Valerie Plame, who is also a rabid anti-Trumper, by the way. So Mark Zaid is involved in protecting whistleblowers, even though they're not really whistleblowers, they're just liars. Mark Zaid is involved working with Meryl Nass. Mark Zaid is mentioned multiple times in the Germs book that, of course, Curt Weldon will not acknowledge the existence of. Mark Zaid is involved with Valerie Plame, Mark Zaid, and so on and so forth. And with the Able Danger intelligence hearings. So, while everyone involved in this research community, you know, is basically paid to lie about why people die, are still encouraging everyone to focus on hijackers and neocons and oil contracts and building insurance and all this other stuff, no one will look at this one book and consider the big narrative. Everyone says follow the money until this book. For some reason, $1 billion made from a collapsed building is following the money. But following the money to several $1 trillion worth of humans which could be used for medical experimentation and disposed of afterwards, for some reason that doesn't factor in. Why stop there? Why stop at the $1 billion? Why not go big? It's because most of the people in the research community lie about why people die. It's also why they won't talk about the opioid epidemic. And it involves Chuck Grassley. And now this stuff, it gets deep. And before I even start, Chuck Grassley is supposedly one of the heroes of a Red America or something like that. Even though Chuck Grassley, oh, that's right, he basically screwed up military contractors with respect to the GTE Zettel scandal. But that's a whole nother thing. Grassley screwed that one up. And there's going to be Arlen Specter there. And it's a senator from Pennsylvania. And it's odd. It's odd how Arlen Specter also doesn't seem to be getting under the feathers here. And it's also odd that even though there appears to be so much knowledge that Hillary Clinton, who became senator just before 9/11, had so much inside knowledge about the possibility of a biological terror attack and the promotion of vaccines. As a matter of fact, the Vaccine Research Center at the NIAID for Anthony Fauci is the Betty Bumpers Vaccine Research Center, funded by the Clintons. For some reason, the worst thing he can say is about Hillary Clinton is she wants a few $1 million for her foundation. Honestly, really? I could care less at this point. If there's a few million here, just take it. Just take it seriously. A few more stolen $1 million is the least of the problems of the United States right now. It's people who are elected, who are lying about 9/11, lying about the opioid epidemic, lying about this deadly novel coronavirus, and so on and so forth. And before I depart, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire it up, and I'm just going to let it play. As you can see, it's over 2 hours long. It's a long video. As I have to just play a small snippet of this, which I didn't play yesterday, of the 5 months ago, the Curt Weldon on Tucker Carlson.
With the Iranian government. And we need to understand that.
It starts around minute 30.
And this is the heart of what we have to get to.
First of all, he's showing off his book here, the Able Danger book. It is about how he talks about how he, as a representative from Pennsylvania and a Republican, got kicked out of office. And you're going to have to listen to how he and, sadly, Tucker Carlson talk about the person who kicked him out. Now, we are predisposed. I say we because I think I don't know. I mean, I think we're pretty ideologically, not left or right here. I don't know anymore. As an analyst, if I naturally lean one way or the other, that means I'm going to have blind spots. But there's a picture painted, right, of globalist liberal Democrats, with their art degrees who, just have tons of money, who are just airdropped in and just want everyone to have gender changes, right? I'm not saying I believe that. What I'm saying is that's the stereotype, okay? That is the stereotype that is pushed upon everyone who considers himself to be right or tends to listen to more conservative podcasters or look for conservative officials to vote for, etc. That's what we are encouraged to think.
2005. Countdown.
And I want you to hear how they refer to the person who comes in to replace him.
This book was endorsed by Jim Woolsey with a 3-page letter.
Former CIA director.
This book was endorsed by Jack Caravelli, Gore CIA advisor. They both endorsed my book. The book was so popular that the people of Iran published it in Farsi. There it is. And they published the book. Without my approval, they published my book. It became a bestseller in Iran. Because it said, you're not the enemy of the American people. Here's what happened, Tucker. 2006.
So let's get to that.
Okay,
they took you out in 2006, and that's kind of where this conversation began. I remember that very well.
So important.
This is so telling. There were pictures on TV. I worked then at CNN. There were pictures of FBI and their blue jackets outside your daughter's house, and it's like, Curt Weldon, corruption scandal. And then you lost to Sestak? Sestak, who was like a former general and just like
He got demoted. He was a 3-star, demoted to a 2-star. His wife worked on the Clinton Security Council. She had intelligence ties. She still does.
Okay. I don't know who Joe Sestak is. All right. Okay, I looked it up. I'm not familiar, but Tucker Carlson says he was like a general. He was like a general. Very carefully chosen words. By the way, I watched the intro to Peter Duke's show today, and basically just assessing some of the language and how Tucker Carlson used it, and it's pretty good. I want to listen to a lot more of it, but for now, anyways, positive shout-out. That is very demeaning. Now, maybe he's just a really terrible general. I don't know. And then Curt Weldon here says that he was demoted. He went from 3 to 2.
Name was, I think, Clark, and he was on the NSC for.
But he was like the ultimate deep stater.
He didn't live in the district. He doesn't live there now.
Right.
He's the ultimate deep stater.
He came into the district to run. He had been in the district, and then after he lost, he went back down there.
He came into the district to run. He had been in a district, and then he left. I'm sorry. He was born in the district. His parents lived in the district. He went to Washington, D.C. You know why he went to Washington, D.C.? Because he was in the Navy for 31 years. He was a 3-star admiral in the Navy. Joe Sestak is actually the highest-ranking American military official ever elected to office. The best that Tucker Carlson could say is he's like a general? Why? He's not human because he's Democrat? Are you serious? Can you hear this? Because I listened to it once. I was outside, I had to move the hydrangea, and, I'm sweating, and I had to wear a netting because the bees were bothering my head, and I'm listening to the podcast, okay? And that just kind of went over my head at the moment. And when I was listening to it, I'm like, well, I guess he's just another one of those crazy wacko liberals, with all of his social causes and open border, la, 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 whatever, with money from California. And then I dig into the guy. Now, I'm not saying I'm a Sestak fan. I don't know him that well, okay? He's Democrat. He probably believes in some positions that I disagree with. Whatever the case, 31 years, a 3-star admiral in the Navy, highest-ranking American in the military ever elected to office. And Tucker Carlson smears him as some kind of general. And then Mr. Pro-America, I love the firemen every day and night. Curt Weldon says, yeah, big ultimate deep stater. I'm not saying I know Sestak well and he would have been a great president. I don't know, okay? I don't know him. I watched a couple video clips, and he was anything but the most outrageous person I've seen. He was very, very cool and calm and collected. He did put in a presidential bid. He had to put in the presidential bid late because he has one child, and the child was just surviving their second bout of brain cancer. And as it turns out, didn't get a lot of support, and then he's more or less has disappeared. Almost no mention of him in the last few years. Okay? The point, though, is be really careful of thinking that if it's not a Republican, then it's a Looney Tune. Because Curt Weldon didn't even serve in the military because of his eyesight. And then if you look at the lies, the totality of lies that Curt Weldon is telling, not identifying this book, being friendly with Joe Biden, putting all the blame over here, whereas Joe Biden had as clear a prediction of 9/11 as anybody in the world the day before, never bringing it up. And then he has the audacity to smear another guy like that. Why? Because he's a Democrat? This is disgusting. This is the one thing, the switch flipped when I saw that. Look, you could say you don't like the views of Sestak if you're familiar with them, and that's fine, okay? But to suggest that he just airdropped in from California when he grew up there, and the reasons for him going from a 3 to 2 are actually very questionable. It's very questionable. Something else was going on there. That doesn't happen very often. Anyways, I just wanted to prime you for why I think Curt Weldon is such a liar and such a deceiver. And this is the 9/11 truth. I'm telling you, the 9/11 truth movement is dead. It is dead if this is all they can do. And this is why Bio 911 truth is going to win. The only hijacking is Bio 911 truth. We are going to show the real evidence. We're going to expose this guy, as well as highlight that we have a lot more in common than we do different. I'm sick and tired of everyone being so tribal in my country. So, it's going to be a 2-hour video playing Able Danger, and you're going to see this whole Able Danger thing is such crap. It's such a farce.
Senator Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania chairing. Just beginning now. Here's live coverage on C-SPAN 3.
With representations made that the Department of Defense had information about an al-Qaeda cell, including the identification of Mohammed Atta, substantially prior to 9/11, and that arrangements which had been made preliminarily to turn over the information to the FBI were not carried out because of concern by the Department of Defense that there might be a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. That is a statute which was enacted shortly after the Civil War, which prevents the United States military from being engaged in law enforcement activities. If the Posse Comitatus Act precluded this information from being turned over by the Department of Defense to the FBI, then that is a matter which may require amendments to the Act, and that is a matter for the Judiciary Committee, squarely within our jurisdiction. The oversight of the FBI also is a matter squarely within the jurisdiction of the Judiciary Committee, so that the committee is concerned about what happened here. There have been some allegations of destruction of records. There has been a question raised as to whether the name Mohammed Atta is the Mohammed Atta, some saying that it's a common name, and the circumstances relating to the identification of the al-Qaeda cell, if in fact that happened, and alleged charts with the name of Mohammed Atta and a picture, all are matters all are questions to be resolved. For the record, I will now introduce without objection a letter which I wrote to Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld dated September 8th, year 2005. There have been extensive discussions between my staff and staff from the Department of Defense, and I was surprised to find that the Department of Defense has ordered 5 key witnesses not to testify, some in the military, some civilian working for the Department of Defense. That looks to me as if it may be obstruction of the committee's activity, something we will have to determine. There have been repeated requests for documents. They were delivered, I'm advised, last night at 5 o'clock, and they're in a secure room, Senate 407, some 500 pages, so there's not been any opportunity to review those documents for whatever light they may bear upon. There has been a contention raised by the Department of Defense that the department is concerned about classified information. This committee is zealous in its protection of classified information, something that I've had personally extensive contact with in my capacity as chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee on the 104th Congress. I conferred with Senator Pat Roberts, chairman of the Intelligence Committee, and our staffs have coordinated so that we will be advised of whatever the Senate Intelligence Committee knows, so that we have the benefit of the work of both staffs. As a precautionary matter, the committee has conferred with the Office of Legal Counsel on the issue of classified information, and I would, without objection, put into the record the advice from the Office of Legal Counsel, which takes the form of a memorandum from my general counsel, Carolyn Short, to me, specifying the advice which she had received orally from the Office of Legal Counsel, was put in writing under their procedure on a request by Senator Leahy and myself in writing. I will put a copy of the letter from Senator Leahy and me to the Office of Legal Counsel and put in to the record this memorandum from the Office of Legal Counsel. The essence of the situation on classified information is that the Office of Legal Counsel advised that I should state, and I now do, at the opening of this hearing, that we are not seeking the disclosure of classified information, and that I'm instructing the witnesses not to disclose any classified information. The legal counsel further advised that I should instruct the witnesses that if there is classified information that they wish to present to the committee, that they so inform the committee in order that at the conclusion of the public hearing, the committee can make the decision about whether to go into closed session. We have a representative from the Department of Defense here today, Mr. William Dugan, who's acting assistant to the Secretary of Defense for Intelligence Oversight, Department of Defense. And legal counsel has made the suggestion that the DOD representative in the audience at the hearing should feel free to raise objections to staff when appropriate. Well, I would go beyond that and say that if someone from the Department of Defense who is here has an objection, they can state it publicly prior to the time any risk arises of the disclosure of classified information, and the committee will take into account what is raised and make a determination, and we will err on the side of caution to be sure that there is no classified information. Our lead witness is Congressman Curt Weldon, who has key positions on the House of Representatives Armed Services Committee and on subcommittees dealing with intelligence. Congressman Weldon has made a very expansive study of this matter. I've known him personally for 25 years or more, since the days when he was mayor of Marcus Hook, and in the House of Representatives, having been elected there in 1986. And my knowledge of Congressman Weldon is to give me the utmost confidence in his thoroughness and his integrity and his objectivity. And on the issue of the classified information, in discussing this matter with Congressman Weldon, he assured me and the committee that classified information was not involved here. May the record show he's nodding, but in a few minutes he will be testifying about his knowledge of that and the reasons why he said, as reported to me in our discussions in advance of this hearing, that if it had been classified, there would have had to been a formal order of destruction. Again, the record show he's nodding, but he will testify to it. Well, that is a very, very brief statement of overview. Terrorism remains the #1 problem in the United States today. Notwithstanding all of the other problems we have, it is the #1 problem. And this country is still recoiling from the events of 9/11/2001, more than 4 years ago. And this country will be recoiling from those events for a very, very long time, and really indefinitely, and perhaps permanently. And if there is some change legislatively which needs to be undertaken in the Posse Comitatus Act, it is the duty of this committee to move ahead and to find out what went wrong here, if something in fact did go wrong. And it is my hope that we will have cooperation yet from the Department of Defense on these important matters. It is not a matter of attaching blame. It is a matter of correcting any errors so that we don't have a repetition of 9/11. And if there is intelligence information available, it ought to be shared and known to the authorities who can act on it, like the FBI and the CIA and the other intelligence agencies. This is practically a Delaware Valley affair at this moment. We've been joined by Senator Biden, whom I yield to now for any opening statement he may care to make.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologize for being a few minutes late. I'm here for two reasons. One, my high regard for the congressman. He's, over the years, in the last 9 months, shared information with me. Some of it seemed prescient, and it turns out that a number of the things he said have been, I was unaware of, have turned out to be the case. And I thought this morning we were going to be able to get to the bottom of some of this. I know, as you know better than I do, that the congressman is a loyal American first, but a very staunch Republican, has no political agenda here other than trying to figure out what we knew and didn't know, and why we didn't know it. And my staff indicates to me that representatives from the Department of Defense had confirmed that an internal investigation identified on 5 Able Danger team members who claimed they'd either seen a picture of Otto or had seen his name in a chart prepared in '99 by the Able Danger team. And the defense investigation found these sources to be credible, but didn't uncover the chart itself. Defense officials have said that documents associated with the project have been destroyed in accordance with regulations regarding collection, dissemination, and destruction procedures for intelligence gathering on people inside the United States. And so I thought we were going to get a chance to clear some of that up this morning. For the life of me, I don't understand why, as I understand it, I stand corrected if I'm wrong, but I understand the witnesses we assumed we were going to get to hear from the Defense Department have been pulled. They may be or may not be in the room, but have been instructed that they cannot testify. I think that's a big mistake, and I am sorry that is the case. But I know the chairman, over the many years we've been friends and worked together, is seldom takes no for an answer when we have a right to hear certain things. And so I hope we will pursue that. But in the meantime, I'm anxious to hear. I'll be very blunt about it. I have heard. I've had the opportunity to travel with the congressman. He and I went to Iraq on Memorial Day with a number of his bipartisan group he led from the House. We had a chance to talk about a lot of this. But so I'm gonna stop. I have a few minutes left, but stop now because I am supposed to co-host the King of Jordan with my colleague Senator Lugar in the Foreign Relations Committee, and he's going to be talking to us about Iraq and a few other things. So I'm going to stay as long as I can, but hope we can get to the bottom of this, and hope we can prevail upon the Defense Department to change its mind. I've heard no good reason for the change, but I thank you and I welcome the Congressman.
Thank you very much, Senator Biden. Senator Leahy, the ranking member, is scheduled to speak shortly on the floor on the nomination of Judge Roberts for Chief Justice, or he would be here as he attends very faithfully. We've been joined by Senator Kyle, who chairs the Subcommittee on Terrorism. Senator Kyle, would you care to make any opening remarks?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, welcome to my colleague Curt Weldon. We came into the House of Representatives together a few years ago, and I've appreciated the effort that he's put into trying to get to the bottom of this matter, and the fact that he's had a lot to do with bringing it to our attention, and to commend you for the effort here to also get to the bottom of it and hold these hearings. I know that we're going to have a lot of work to do in the future to bring all of the folks here, and in the meantime subscribe to your notion that we need to do a little bit more work on the whole issue of posse comitatus so that we can address that as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Kyle. For the record, as to Congressman Weldon's background and work in this phase, it ought to be noted that he is vice chairman of the House Armed Services Committee and chairs the Tactical Air and Land Forces Subcommittee. He served 6 years as chairman of the Military Research and Development Subcommittee, and he's also vice chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, so he's been very deeply involved in these issues. Our practice, Congressman Weldon, is to set the time at 5 minutes, even for members of the House or for senators, but knowing what you have to say, we're going to set the clock at 15 minutes, and to the extent you can testify about this very complex situation within that time would be fine. And if it takes a little longer, we want you to have an opportunity to develop the factual issues as fully as you can. Thank you for coming, and we look forward to your testimony.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me thank my friends Joe Biden and John Kyle for also showing up for this hearing. And I want to thank you for your willingness to listen to the facts of this story and attempt to get to the bottom of it. And I will be brief. I wrote my statement down, which I usually do, to stay in compliance with your time limitation, Mr. Chairman. I have a number of documents that I'll make available to the committee and will enter into the record. If the chairman would like, I have a full written statement and a timeline, but I have some prepared comments I'd like to make today. I'd like to thank you and Ranking Member Leahy and the other members for scheduling this hearing today. Mr. Chairman, I am dismayed and frustrated, however, with the response of our government to information about the program Able Danger. The Defense Department has acknowledged that a program, Able Danger, existed and operated during the 1999-2000 time period, authorized by the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and carried out by SOCOM with the help of the Army. DOD has stated publicly that 5 individuals, including an Army Lieutenant Colonel, recipient of the Bronze Star, who's in the room today, and a Navy Annapolis graduate, ship commander, have emphatically claimed that they worked on or ran Able Danger and identified Muhammad Atta and 3 other 9/11 terrorists over 1 year prior to the Trade Center attack. These 5 individuals have told me, your staff and others, that Able Danger amassed significant amounts of data, primarily from open sources, about al-Qaeda operations worldwide, and that this data continued to be used through 2001 in briefings prepared for the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and others. These 2 brave military officers have risked their careers to come forward to simply tell the truth and to help America fully understand all that happened prior to 9/11 that had or might have had an impact on the most significant attack ever against our country and our citizens. These individuals have openly expressed their willingness to testify here today without subpoenas, but have been silenced by the Pentagon. They have been prevented from testifying, according to the Pentagon, due to concerns regarding classified information, in spite, Mr. Chairman, of the Pentagon's claims to members of the House Armed Services Committee 2 weeks ago that the bulk of the data used by Able Danger was open source, which was why DOD lawyers claimed that no certificates were needed to certify the destruction of massive amounts of data that had been collected. Mr. Chairman, you can't have it both ways. It's either classified or it's not. But what the Pentagon has done the last 2 weeks is they've contradicted themselves. Another former DOD official told me and your staff, and was prepared to testify today, and he's in the room, that he worked on the data collection and analysis used to support Able Danger. He was prepared to state, as he told us, that he had an Able Danger chart with Muhammad Atta identified on his office wall at Andrews Air Force Base until DOD Investigative Services removed it. At risk to his current employment, he has told us and was prepared to testify under oath in direct rebuttal to the claims of the 9/11 commissioners that he was aware of the purchase of Muhammad Atta's photograph from a California contractor, not from U.S. legal identity documents. He was prepared to discuss the extensive amount of data collected and analyzed about al-Qaeda.
Whom are you referring to now, Congressman Weldon?
Talking about J.D., right here, J.D. Smith, in the room. He was prepared to discuss the extensive amount of data collected and analyzed about al-Qaeda, underscoring the fact that Able Danger was never about one chart or one photograph, but rather was and is about massive data collected and assembled against what Madeleine Albright declared to be in 1999 an international terrorist organization. He too has been silenced. Another former DOD official will testify today that he was ordered to destroy up to 2.5 terabytes of data. Now, I don't know what a terabyte of data is, so we contacted the Library of Congress. It's equal to 1/4 of all the entire written collection that the Library of Congress maintains. This information was amassed through Able Danger that could still be useful today. He will name the individual who ordered him to destroy that data and will state for the record that the customer for that data, General Lambert of SOCOM, was never consulted about that destruction and expressed his outrage upon learning that the destruction had taken place. An FBI employee that I identified and has met with your committee staff and was prepared to testify today that she arranged 3 meetings with the FBI Washington field office in September of 2000 for the specific purpose of transferring Al-Qaeda, Brooklyn cell, Able Danger information to the FBI for their use. In each instance, she has stated that meetings were canceled at the last minute by DOD officials. She has not been allowed to testify publicly today. The 9/11 Commission was created by Congress with my full support. I have publicly championed many of their recommendations. On 4 separate occasions, I attempted to brief the Commission on specifics related to intelligence problems, lack of intelligence collaboration, the NOAA concept, the National Operations Analysis Hub that I had pursued in '99 and 2000, and the work of the LEWA and Able Danger. Except for one 5-minute telephone call with Tom Kane, I was unable to meet with 9/11 commissioners and/or staff. In fact, I had my Chief of Staff hand-deliver questions to be asked of George Tenet and others to the Commission on March the 24th of 2004, which I will enter into the record. They were never used and the questions were never asked. It was, in fact, a member of the 9/11 Commission who encouraged me to pursue the Able Danger story after I briefed him on June 29th of 2005. He informed me that the 9/11 Commission staff had never briefed Commission members on Able Danger. He said that the facts had to be brought out. When the 9/11 Commission first responded to questions about Able Danger, they changed their story and spin 3 times in 3 days. This is not what Congress intended. All of the people involved with Able Danger should have been interviewed by the 9/11 Commission. Because Able Danger ceased to formally exist before the administration came into office, I understand why there might have been a lack of knowledge about the program and its operations. In fact, when I first met with Steve Cambone, and I'm the one that introduced him to Tony Schaefer, who's here today, he told me that he was at a significant disadvantage, that I knew more about Able Danger than he did. But that is not an excuse to not pursue the complete story of Able Danger. In fact, Mr. Chairman, DOD never conducted an actual investigation. And this came up in our Armed Services meeting 2 weeks ago. No oaths were given, no subpoenas were issued, rather an informal inquiry was initiated. A thorough review of Able Danger, its operations, and data collected and analyzed, and recommendations for data transfer to other agencies could have and should have been completed by more than one member of Congress using one staffer. Instead, over the past 3 months, I have witnessed denial, deception, threats to DOD employees, character assassination, and now silence. This is not what our constituents want. It is unacceptable to the families and friends of the victims of 9/11 and flies in the face of every ideal upon which this country was founded. Over the past 6 weeks, some have used the Able Danger story to make unfair public allegations, to question the intentions or character of 9/11 commissioners, or to advance conspiracy theories. I have done none of this. When I learned details of Able Danger in June, I talked to 9/11 commissioners personally and staff. I delivered a comprehensive floor speech on June 27th of 2005 and methodically briefed the House chairs of Armed Services, Intelligence, Homeland Security, and Justice Appropriations. This story only became public even though significant portions were first reported in a Heritage Foundation speech that I gave, still available online, on May 23rd, 2002, and a Computer World magazine story that ran on January 28, 2003, when Government Security News ran a story on August the 1st of 2005, followed by a front-page story in the New York Times on August the 2nd of 2005. My goal now, Mr. Chairman, is the same as it was then: the full and complete truth for the American people about the run-up to 9/11. Many Americans lost family and friends on 9/11. Michael Horrocks was a neighbor of mine in Pennsylvania, a former Navy pilot, graduate of Westchester, like myself. He was at the controls of one of the planes on 9/11. He left behind a wife and 2 kids. We built a playground in his honor at his kid's school. Ray Downey was a personal friend. As a New York deputy fire officer, he took me through the garage of the Trade Center towers in 1993, the first time bin Laden hit us. We worked together. In fact, he gave me the idea for the creation of the Gilmore Commission, which I authored and added to the Defense Authorization Bill in 1997. On September 11, 2001, he was the New York City Fire Department Chief of All Rescue. The 343 firefighters, including Ray, who were all killed, were under Ray's command as he led the largest and most successful rescue effort in the history of mankind. I promised Michael's wife and kids, and Ray's wife and kids and grandkids, that we would not stop until the day that we had learned all the facts about 9/11. Unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, that day has not yet arrived. We must do better.
Thank you,
Chairman,
very much.
I have significant material that I would put into the record, data that I provided to the 9/11 Commission, questions I gave them. I have packets that I gave them. I have material on the NOAA process. I can enter it all into the record. It's basically your call.
Without objection, all of those matters, documents will be made a part of the record. Senator Biden, you said you have other commitments. Can you wait for 5 minutes for the first round, or I'd be glad to yield to you if...
Would you mind, Mr. Chairman?
No, I'd be glad to.
But I'd like to suggest, Mr. Chairman's permission, since the questions I had prepared, my staff and I had prepared, quite frankly, weren't directed to the chairman, or to Congressman Weldon, but to others who we thought were going to be testifying. I'd like to submit for the record, just so it's in the record, what I want to know from these other witnesses. And if that,
Without objection, you may do so.
and there's a number of theories that are bouncing around, Curt, about why would, first of all, timeline here. Able Danger was established in September 99, correct?
It was the 98-99 time frame, but officially 99.
All right. When did it go out of business?
As best we can tell, it ended in 2000, yet there was a briefing given to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a 3-hour briefing in January of 2001 using material. Now, even though they've claimed they destroyed all the material, there obviously had to be material for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs to be briefed, and I just learned that Steve Cambone also was involved in a briefing with the head of the DIA in March of 2001. I was not aware of that information until last week. One of your witnesses would have explained that here today.
Well, that's what I was hoping we'd be able to establish, is that Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer, who I understand is in the audience today, who's under Rumsfeld's gag order, attempted to give this information as well to the FBI in 2001?
2000, September of 2000, he arranged 3 meetings, and the FBI person who was going to testify but was silenced was going to state that she knew the purpose of the meetings.
And was anyone prepared to testify to the fact that there was a 3-hour briefing for General Shelton?
Yes, Tony Schaefer would have done that.
And for the record, obviously he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs at the time, right?
Yes.
And then the March 2001 meeting, that briefing for Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, Steve Cambone, there was someone prepared to confirm that today as well?
My understanding is Mr. Cambone was not in his current position at that time. He was a special assistant to Secretary Rumsfeld. And the purpose of the brief, my understanding, it was not specifically for Able Danger. It was a briefing on another classified program, but Able Danger came up. It was discussed, and it was discussed by a lawyer who you had wanted to testify named Richard Schifrin, by the head of Naval Intelligence, Admiral Wilson, and I believe it was a third person in the room. Is that it? Just the two. Admiral Wilson, Richard Schifrin, Steve Cambone, and Able Danger was discussed in March of 2001 at that meeting.
My next question, why was Able Danger shut down?
There were a combination of reasons. They had done a profile of Chinese proliferation in 1999 that John Hamre had asked for. I was aware of that presentation. And because it was massive data mine that had not yet been vetted, a couple of very sensitive names surfaced because they had been affiliated with Stanford University, where many of the students that were doing this very, very specific research, very sensitive to our country's security, were located. And I think partly because of that, there was a wave of controversy. In fact, in the House, the son of Congressman Sam Johnson was working for the Raytheon Corporation. He went to his father and said, "Dad, they're destroying data." Sam went to Dan Burton, who was chairman of the Government Operations Committee, and Dan Burton subpoenaed documents that had been used in compiling the Chinese proliferation information. As a result of that, tremendous pressure was placed on the Army because this was a prototype operation, and they shut down the Able Danger operation. General Schumacher was so enamored with this capability that he stood up a separate operation in Garland, Texas, at a Raytheon facility to try to duplicate what had been done at the Lewa in the Army. And that lasted for about a year, maybe slightly longer than a year. So the Special Forces Command understood the significance of this data. And as a result of the Chinese proliferation situation, I'm convinced Able Danger was shut down.
Is there any thing to the sort of, when you get into this, the sort of buzz that it was shut down because Able Danger exceeded its authority and was dealing with targeting Americans that the Defense Department and others were concerned would cause a real brouhaha. There was even some press accounts that the now Secretary of State came up on a list as being a suspect somehow, or something ridiculous. I mean, what part did that play in? And it
was a significant part. In fact,
Senator Biden, if you need a little more time, take it. You won't be here for a second round, so if you need a little more time, proceed.
In fact, that was a significant part. The Secretary of State's name did come up along with the former Secretary of Defense because they were both affiliated with Stanford, where this research work was being done by Chinese students that were here basically acquiring technology that was very sensitive to our security. But for them to say that somehow this information should have all been destroyed, to me, is unacceptable, because the military itself has said it was open source information. It's the same information the Republican and Democrat Party used to target voters. It's massive data you can buy in open sources. It's information you can get. It's magazine subscriptions that you order. It's everything that's available in the public domain. Now, if there is, in fact, some classified information blended in with that, then that needs to be dealt with, and there are processes to do that. The Able Danger folks knew that there was the possibility of information coming out about American nationals, and they knew how to deal with that. I don't understand for the life of me how that would justify destroying 2.5 terabytes of data, and especially not in telling the customer, before you're going to do that, I'm going to destroy all your data. If Madeleine Albright has declared Al-Qaeda the top international terrorist organization in the world, which she did, and furthermore, for them to brief General Shelton in January of 2001 meant they didn't destroy all the information. So who decided to keep information, and what led to the fact that some of that information was kept for later briefings? So I don't accept the position. And furthermore, what I would say is let them come and explain that publicly.
Well, that's the only point I'm trying to get at here. This is a bit, your assertions are not confusing, and I mean, I'm inclined to accept what the witnesses would have said based upon staff and based upon assertions that have been made by you. You wouldn't be saying this with them sitting behind you if these guys weren't ready to say what you said they're going to say. One of them at this point, gagged or not, would say, hey, I wasn't going to say that. So it's pretty compelling. The part that quite frankly confuses the devil out of me as I try to figure this out, Mr. Chairman, this started in the Clinton administration. It morphed into, or it leached into the beginning of the Bush administration. It's not like there's an attempt to nail politically anybody here. I don't understand why. It's not self-evident to me why the Defense Department would be so focused on this not coming forward. I don't understand, quite frankly, why the commission and Slade Gorton if he was, and if in fact folks were briefed, why they'd say no. It's absolutely, I forget, he's a very, very strong statement saying
They were never briefed.
that they were never briefed, and no one knew anything about this. And I don't get why the cover-up. I mean, I don't get the purpose of the cover-up. I mean, is it to protect the Clinton administration, the Bush administration? Is it to protect something that was going on that was illegal under the law? Is it? I mean, I don't get it. I mean, I don't understand why people aren't just coming forward and saying, here's the deal. This is what happened. I hope we can get to the bottom of this, Mr. Chairman. I would like to be able to submit some questions in writing. I know when I say submit the questions, I was going to ask the witnesses so they're on the record as to where I'm confused, what I want certified or spoken to anyway. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your courtesy in allowing me, A, to go first and go over by almost 4 minutes the time allotted. And I thank the chairman and the House for being here.
Thank you.
Senator Biden, your questions will be made a part of the record and directed to the witnesses to give you responses. Congressman Weldon, you commented about threats and character assassination. What did you mean as to the threats?
Well, Mr. Chairman, at least 2 of the 5 people that were going to appear today were threatened with removal of their security clearances if they continue to talk about this. This is going
Are you
back,
at liberty to identify who those 2 are?
I will to you. I'd rather do it privately since the Defense Department has chosen not to allow anyone to testify, but I will provide that information to the committee. At least 2 of them, and one of them, and I will state this publicly because it happened just on the eve of this hearing, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer had his security clearance officially removed the day before this hearing was scheduled to help, not yesterday, but actually it would have been Monday night. He was notified. His lawyer will come next and will tell you that his security clearance was officially removed. There's no doubt in my mind that that was caused by his cooperation.
And how about the character assassination?
There's been character assassination left and right. I mean, we had the Larry DeRita, the spokesman for the Pentagon, question the memories of these military people when they came out. And I called Larry DeRita on the phone. I said, how can you question an Annapolis graduate who was the commander of one of our naval destroyers who risked his entire career after 23 years?
You're talking about Captain Philpott.
I'm talking about Captain Philpott, to tell this story because the 9/11 Commission characterized his work as historically insignificant. How can you challenge his memory? Why don't you challenge the memories of the other people who said this didn't occur? I mean, that to me was outrageous. There are a number of other examples. I can provide a whole list of those, a litany of those character assassinations and attempts to intimidate for the committee.
Would you specify again why you concluded that the information was not classified based upon what DOD told you?
At a private briefing that we had for members of the Armed Services Committee 2 weeks ago, there were probably 6 members in the room, 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and all of our staff. The legal counsel for the Pentagon, when asked, what about the certification for the destruction of this data?
Mr. Haynes?
I don't know the name. I will get it for you. I don't recall the name right now, but he was legal counsel. He said, well, there's no certificate needed if the information is not classified or not used in compartmentalized work. Well, you can't claim that the information is not classified on one hand and then come in today when all they're going to talk about is open source
information. The representation was made to you that this did not involve classified information?
Yes, it was to the Armed Services Committee members.
And is there a transcript of that record?
No, there's not. It was an informal brief. Most of what the Pentagon did was informal. There were no minutes kept. There were no witnesses put under oath. There were no subpoenas issued. It was not an investigation, and that point was raised by the members of the Armed Services Committee. It was not an investigation.
Since Captain Philpott has been precluded from testifying, ordered not to testify, I'd prefer to hear him, but in his absence, did you discuss this matter with him, really? Yes. Question him in detail?
I questioned Captain Philpott. He was the one who was so incensed about what happened that he risked his entire naval career and came out with a New York Times interview that I arranged. And he said to the reporter with me there, listening and witnessing, that he would risk his entire career in life on the fact that in January and February of 2000, he identified absolutely Muhammad Atta as a part of the Brooklyn cell.
And with respect to Dr. Eileen Prisser, she too has been ordered not to testify. Had you discussed this matter in detail with her?
I've discussed it with all the individuals. She too said that there were materials that were produced that identified Muhammad Atta by name and with a facial recognition that the 9/11 Commission said couldn't have happened because there were no government ID documents. But as you'll hear, or you won't hear because the JD won't be allowed to testify, but what he would have said is they purchased the photograph of Muhammad Atta from a contractor in California. Now, we came very close to identifying that contractor, and we're still working on it. We know people who knew the woman.
And who said that?
One of the 9/11 commissioners, I think it was Tim Romer, said publicly that there's no way they could have had a photograph of Muhammad Atta because there were no government records at the time that the Able Danger reported. But they didn't get it from government records. They got the photograph of Muhammad Atta by purchasing it from a source in California, and the witness that was not allowed to testify today, who's sitting behind me, would have stated that he was aware of that effort and how they got that photograph.
What information do you have as to the allegation on destruction of records?
You're going to hear testimony today from another former federal employee who again is risking his career. He's a private contractor today, that he was ordered to destroy.
And his name is?
His name is Kleinsmith, Eric Kleinsmith. He's on your witness list. And he will testify that he was ordered to destroy all Able Danger material, 2.5 terabytes. And he will name the person who ordered him to destroy that data. And he was further told that if he didn't do it, he would lose his job and quite possibly might go to jail. He will also testify, and you can ask him this question, but it's my understanding he'll testify that when he met with General Lambert, who was the SOCOM official who was the customer for this data, he had never been consulted prior to the destruction of this data, and when he found out, he was livid. For the life of me, I don't understand how someone extraneous from that chain of command could order destruction of data and not even inform the customer of that data, the general at SOCOM, General Lambert.
Thank you, Congressman Weldon. My red light went on during the middle of your last answer, so I will desist now and turn to Senator Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that most of the questions I have are actually for the lawyers who are going to testify, but I'm not sure what they can testify to, so let me ask you a couple questions.
I don't think Mark Zaid will be limited, John.
Okay,
I think he'll
great.
give you whatever you want.
But I'm trying to now, having served on the Intelligence Committee for 8 years, I can understand why there might be some nervousness about this, so I'm going to try to put on a hat to be the most restrictive devil's advocate here and try to figure out why they might want to restrict this information. For example, data mining is known to be a method for intelligence collection, and it's just now beginning to be something that is utilized, and this was one of the first significant uses of it, as I understand it. That is a method of intelligence gathering. What do you know about the point that perhaps one of the reasons why they don't want a lot of public testimony about this is that it might reveal capabilities, methodology that might be relevant to A, future intelligence gathering, and B, might conceivably tip somebody off that they may or may not have been a part of an investigation if they were, if it related to data mining. Is that, from all of your discussions of this, could that be part of the reason? And if it is, why would that necessarily limit most of the things that you've talked about here?
Well, it wouldn't. It has been a reason given, and I share the gentleman's concern for security. We served together on the Armed Services Committee for a number of years, and as the Vice Chairman of the Armed Services Committee, I would never do anything to reveal classified data. So that would never be an intent of mine. This information was largely open source. From 1999, I started pursuing the prototype that the Army had developed at our Leva facility at Fort Belvoir. I was the oversight chairman of the committee that funded it. I was enamored with their capability, and I saw tremendous potential. In fact, I had experience in '99 that I'll go into, but it would take some time if you want, as to how I saw the CIA and the FBI did not have the capability. I took a delegation of 10 members to Vienna to meet with 5 Russians to find a common foundation to end the Kosovo War. Before I left, the Russians told me they were bringing a Serb. I called George Tenet at the CIA, said, "Can you run me a profile of this Serb?" He gave me 2 sentences. I called the Army's Information Dominance Center, which I had a good relationship with. I said to the folks down there, Dr. Heath and Dr. Pricer, "Can you run me a profile?" They unofficially gave me like 8 or 10 pages of information. When I came back from that trip, I got a call from the FBI and the CIA to debrief them on what I knew about the Serb. And the CIA said, Congressman, when I said, why is this so urgent? They said, we've been tasked by the State Department to brief our ambassador negotiating the end of the war, and you met with this person, so we want you to debrief our people. So I had 4 agents in my office for 2 hours, and I gave them all that I knew, and when I ended, I said, now you know where I got my data from? They said, well, you got it from the Russians. I said, no. Well, you got it from the Serb? I said, no. I said, before I left America, I called the Army's Information Dominance Center. They ran me a profile and gave me 8 to 10 pages of open source information. The FBI and the CIA said, what's the Army's Information Dominance Center? It was then that I developed a 9-page briefing called the NOAA, a National Operations and Analysis Hub. John Hamre agreed with my assessment that this was critically important, and it was developed by intelligence people, not by me. On November the 4th of 1999, 2 years before 9/11, I had the CIA, the FBI, and DOD in my office at John Hamre's suggestion to brief them on creating what today exists, the TTIC and now the NCTC. And the CIA at the end of the brief said, we don't need that. It's not necessary. And so as a result, before 9/11, I felt I did not push hard enough against the system to put into place a mechanism that today is in place that might have helped us understand what was about to happen.
But there's nothing from your knowledge here that would prevent testimony in general about what was done here?
No.
All right.
We would never get into specifics, sure. Nothing in general.
Okay, and then just a second, a little bit of time. The matter of posse comitatus, is it your belief that it was a significant factor in the decision both to destroy the information and not to provide testimony here, that there was a concern that perhaps they had gone too far in gathering information about people who were legally in the United States and that they might not have been authorized to do that, and that might be one of the reasons for the reluctance to testify as well as the destruction of the
That might be a reason, but to me that's absolutely unacceptable. I mean, these are terrorists. If they are terrorists in the United States and we were monitoring them or had information from open sources, then I think our law enforcement community had a right to know that. We're not, I mean, our Republican and Democrat parties transfer this information to ID voters. It's called Vote Smart. I mean, we can use it for voter ID, but we can't use it to identify people in this country that are involved in terrorism? I mean, cut me a break. There's something wrong with the system, and at a minimum, we should have been able to discuss that. That's what we're all about as policymakers. But to clamp down on this and to do it with such venom, to me, it's mysterious. I don't understand it.
And we'll get in more to that in the next, with the next panel. Thank you very much, Representative Weldon.
Thank you, Senator Kyle. Senator Grassley?
Mr. Chairman, because of my work with Katrina, I'm not going to be able to stay here. So I got a statement I want to put in the record. And
without objection, so ordered.
And I've got questions in writing for 2 witnesses. And I do have something that I want to say at this point beyond that statement. And that is to compliment the Congressman for your work. And it's just so reminiscent of everything I've run into, not just with the Defense Department, but bureaucracy generally, and maybe the Defense Department to some extent just a little bit worse than others. But what you say you don't understand is an institutional disease that we have, that if the information that you want out got out, people would have egg on their face.
Yep.
And they're just going to try to wait you out, and I hope that Senator Specter, you won't let that happen. Whatever it takes to get this information out needs to be gotten out, not just to back up Congressman Weldon's work, but more importantly, just the fact that Congress has to fulfill its constitutional responsibility of oversight. You know, I mean, we all want to brag about the legislating we're doing, but quite frankly, in this day and age, I think we do a more responsible job for our constituents, what we do through congressional oversight, to make sure that these laws are faithfully executed and that money spent according to congressional intent. And particularly now when we're in this war on terrorism, we've got to get all the information out we can. You can't have somebody hiding information from Congress under the ridiculous idea that we might be compromising national security when you and I can buy that very same information. And more importantly, what can be done in a closed session of the Congress if it can't be done in open session. Yeah. Really, what's at stake here is not, again, Congressman Weldon. What's at stake here is whether or not Congress is going to fulfill its constitutional responsibility, and whether or not we're going to let people that come up here with a lot of ribbons and a lot of stars on their shoulders, or political appointees of the same department, just embarrass us and get away with it. And I know that you're not a senator that's going to be embarrassed. And whatever I can do to help you, count on me helping you. Because we must get to the bottom of this. Thank you for your being a great American.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. I don't often do this, but I associate myself with your remarks. That is not that I don't often associate myself with your remarks. I just often associate myself with any remarks. But you and I came here in the same time in the 1980 election, and you have been fierce in oversight and whistleblowers and determination, and I've joined you all the way. And you expressed it very well. I don't have to repeat it. Thank you. And the questions that you have propounded for other witnesses will be made a part of the record, and they will be submitted to the witnesses, and we will get answers for you. Congressman Weldon, you had testified that at one juncture there was an effort made to turn over this information to the FBI. Could you amplify that, please?
Yes, Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer was prepared to testify. His lawyer will testify today that he had on 3 occasions set up meetings with the FBI Washington field office. The woman who set those meetings up is prepared to testify. Your staff has met with her and they've interviewed her, and she also was prohibited from testifying, but she knew the purpose of the meetings. The meetings were designed to allow the Special Forces Unit of Able Danger to transfer relevant information that they thought important to the FBI about the Brooklyn cell, which included Muhammad Atta and 3 of the terrorists. This information was largely gathered from open sources. On 3 separate occasions, in September of 2000, at the last minute, lawyers, I assume from within DOD, and we still haven't determined who made the ultimate decision, but lawyers determined that those meetings could not take place and they were shut down.
Talking about the FBI person. Congressman Weldon, had this information been called to the attention of the National Security Advisor?
Mr. Chairman, 2 weeks after 9/11, some of the folks at the Army's LEWA and involved in Able Danger came into my office and brought me a chart that had al-Qaeda linkages and pan-Islamic terrorist threats, I think was the way the chart was categorized. I took that chart immediately down to the White House and provided it to Stephen Hadley. And I took with me Dan Burton, chairman of the Government Operations Oversight Committee.
And when was that?
That was 2 weeks after 9/11, so it would have been September the 25th. And I took it down immediately. As soon as I got it, I said, I've got to get this down to the White House. Stephen Hadley's response to me was, where did you get this from, Congressman? I said, I got it from the Army's Information Dominance Center. I said, this is the process that's been used, and I've been trying to convince the government for 3 years to put into place that the CIA has refused to accept, because up until the establishment of the TTIC, the Terrorism Threat Integration Center, the CIA was not using open source information, which to me was a disaster in itself for our national intelligence estimates. And so I said to Mr. Hadley, I said, this is a process they use to obtain this information. And he said to me, and I remember this quote, it sticks out in my head, and I gave a speech at the Heritage Foundation a year later, which is still online. You can get a copy of it and listen to my speech as it was given then, that he said, I've got to show this to the man. And I said, the man? He said, yes, the President of the United States. So I gave him the chart. Now, some say, well, why didn't you keep a copy of the chart? Well, my goal there wasn't to keep a copy of a chart involving something that just happened to destroy the lives of 3,000 people. I gave it to our Deputy National Security Advisor. And that information was information gleaned from the work of Able Danger and the work being done by the team that wanted to testify today.
The FBI agent you referred to a few moments ago was Xanthi Mangum?
Yes.
Would you care to testify about those large charts you have
Sure.
here?
If I could have my staff line them up on the side. The first chart is actually a reproduced version of what was provided to Stephen Hadley. I wanted to reproduce this and asked if it could be reproduced, and this is what bothers me about the military saying the data was destroyed, and why I suggested that perhaps the hard drives and the servers from the companies who did this work should be subpoenaed and brought in. This is actually a chart of Al-Qaeda and the various cells around the world. Much of this data, most of it was obtained prior to 9/11 by the work of Able Danger. This is the kind of work they did, the link analysis they did. On this chart, as you see, there is an actual photograph of Muhammad Ali.
What does that depict generally?
It depicts the organizational and activity associations of Al-Qaeda operatives that were involved in 9/11 and related events. Much of this data was obtained before 9/11 from information that was gathered from the 93 attack, the individuals involved in that attack, the attack on the USS Cole, the attack at the African embassies, and what they did, they identified 5 key cells of Al-Qaeda worldwide, one of which was the Brooklyn cell. And so they were gathering this information and basically assembling it in the data mining process in 99 and 2000. When I went to Hadley, the chart that I gave him was an assemblage of that information that they had, which was massive, and which you'll hear in a moment, was equal to 1/4 of all the printed material in the Library of Congress.
And who prepared the chart?
The chart was prepared by a corporation, Orion Corporation. And my understanding from your staff is that they were not totally forthcoming to you. They told your staff initially they only produced 2 charts. When I pulled out 12 charts, because I have 12 charts that I kept on my own, your staff went back to the lawyer for Orion, which is now owned by another security firm. My understanding, and you can check with your staff, is that they've been delivered something like 20 charts. But the initial response of Orion was they only produced 2 charts, and they only produced charts on white backgrounds. Well, I have charts in my possession that they produce with their name on them, their insignia, their logo, that are in black, that are in green, they're in all kinds of colors. They were charts that dealt with Chinese proliferation, corruption in Russia, corruption in Serbia, charts that dealt with drug cartels and drug cells. All of this work was done by Orion. So Orion was the corporation. And in fact, one of the witnesses was an executive, I believe the vice president of Orion. Is that correct? He was the vice president of Orion. He was a senior officer at Orion Corporation, and he was one of the people scheduled to appear before you today. The second chart, Mr. Chairman, is for me the most important. This is what we have to have. This is Al-Qaeda today. Now, I've been told by the military liaisons of the NCTC that our NCTC cannot do this kind of massive data analysis and link chart analysis that has been done by our information dominant centers. So what I've been working with is the Army and the Navy in generating a next generation capability called Able Providence. In fact, the Navy has even supplied us the budget numbers and the line where they would want the money submitted so that we could create this kind of additional capability. This gives you a massive effort worldwide of what Al-Qaeda is doing. Mr. Chairman, to win the war on terrorism, it's not about classified information. And what I try to convey to the CIA against a roadblock of their mindset, which Senator Grassley referred to, is they just didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to use open source of information. And the bulk of the good information about terrorists, in fact, comes from open source information. I'll be glad to provide charts for the committee so you have permanent records of each.
Thank you. My red light went on during your answer, Senator.
Did you want to ask about these charts, how they were prepared, when, and by whom, and so on?
Senator Kyle raises a good point. Who prepared the charts? I'd ask you that as to one.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I think there might have been a miscommunication. When you asked about the chart, I immediately sensed a disconnect here. I believe that Representative Weldon was talking about who prepared the charts that were allegedly destroyed, or may in fact have been destroyed, that he took to Mr. Hadley. You may have been referring to this chart here, and perhaps that should be cleared up.
Well, thank you for the suggestion, Senator Kyle. Congressman Weldon, who prepared those charts and when?
All the charts that I had that were given to me during the process that was being done by the LIWA, including the Able Danger charts, were prepared by the Orion Corporation, and they had their insignia on the bottom. Now, there may have been other charts that were not prepared by Orion that I'm not prepared to talk about.
Did Orion prepare the charts you've just...
The charts that I have here were prepared by one of the information dominant centers, which continues to operate today. I'll have to give you the exact name of the producer of these charts, and these were made back in June of this year.
Senator Kyle?
Might I just ask one more question? You remember the chart that you gave to Mr. Hadley, and the first chart that you showed us there. You've just testified to what degree of similarity or overlap. Can you make a comparison of those two charts for us, just so we'll have an idea of what Mr. Hadley saw?
It's hard to recollect, and I can tell you this. I talked to Mr. Hadley 3 months ago when I briefed him on another issue, and I said, remember that chart that I gave you? And he said, yes, I remember it. Now, I don't know whether the White House still has it. They probably don't. It's been 4 years. I can tell you my recollection of that chart is it was very similar to this, but not as comprehensive. This chart includes post 9/11 data. So obviously the chart that I gave him did not have post 9/11 data, but it was significant. It identified the cells, the 5 key cells they were working on, and to the best of my recollection, identified Muhammad Atta on the chart.
Thank you very much, Senator Kyle. Thank you, Congressman Weldon. I think you've performed a real public service with what you have done here and what your analysis has been. And perhaps when the Department of Defense knows the extent of your testimony and the questions raised, they will be responsive. One final question. Do you think there is any need to modify the posse comitatus legislation?
You know, I'll leave that up to you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not an attorney. I respect your judgment. I certainly respect John Kyle's judgment as a former colleague of mine. I am still developing my own feelings, but as an attorney, I would respect your insights into that. From a policy standpoint, I have thoughts, but I would rather not convey them yet until I know the full parameters of what really happened here. And I want to thank you, because I realize that putting this hearing on was not something. There were people that were criticizing your intentions or perhaps my intentions. I have no intentions, Mr. Chairman, here, except to have the truth be known. I have made no public allegations against any person. I have not questioned the intact character or integrity of any commissioner. I would never do that. In fact, I talked to 2 commissioners. I was the one that brought the Defense Department in, Mr. Chairman, to give them a chance to get the information I had. All I asked them was to protect the military personnel that were cooperating. And John, you went through this during the 90s, where we saw whistleblower after whistleblower have their careers ruined. And now, unfortunately, it's happening in this administration. Tony Schaefer's career has been ruined. And to me, that's outrageous. It's unacceptable. That was my main concern. And Mr. Chairman, if I might add one additional point. I did all this work, and I'm not boasting because it was just something I had to do for 6 weeks, but I couldn't have done it without one person. I only had one staffer work it. My Chief of Staff, Russ Queso, who's in the room, a former Navy liaison for the U.S. Navy, did yeoman's work in tracking down all these meetings and contacts, and I brought in, again as a volunteer, Jim Woolsey. Jim Woolsey's a close friend of mine. Jim Woolsey sat in on a number of meetings with these people early on to make sure that I wasn't going off the deep end and to counsel me to make sure that I wasn't jumping to conclusions. And so I'd like to thank both Russ Queso and Jim Woolsey publicly for their outstanding cooperation and assisting in this effort. This is not about embarrassing anybody. It's about answering the questions of what happened before 9/11. Thank you.
Congressman Weldon, do you think that DOD acted in this matter, if the allegations are true, as to destruction of documents because of their concern about violating posse comitatus?
No, I don't believe that's the reason right now that they did that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Without objection, we will admit to the record the statement of Senator Leahy, who, as I announced earlier, was scheduled this morning to speak on the nomination of Judge Roberts for Chief Justice, and also without objection to the letter from former Senator Slade Gorton to Senator Leahy and myself, dated September 20th. We now call the second panel, Mark Zaid, Esquire, and Mr. Eric Kleinsmith. You have a bio on Mr. Mark Zaid is the managing partner of the Washington law firm Krieger & Zaid, specializing in litigation, also executive director of the James Madison Project, a nonprofit organization which educates the public on issues relating to intelligence, former board member of the Public Policy Law and Policy Group of the International Law Students Association, graduate of Albany Law School, where he was associate editor of the Law Review, cum laude, a graduate of the University of Rochester. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Zaid, and we look forward to your testimony.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity. I have my law partner, Roy Krieger, next to me. I'd respectfully ask for my full written statement to be placed into the record.
Without objection, it will be made a part of the record.
I'd like to first compliment Congressman Weldon. Were it not for his tenacious efforts, we would not be here today, and this is a very important day. Unfortunately, I'm here as a surrogate speaker for several of the witnesses that were scheduled to appear, and I put this testimony together hastily in a matter of a few hours yesterday. As you said, I'm the partner in law firm of Krieger and Zaid. We primarily handle national security cases. Most of our clients are within the covert community in the military and the intelligence world. In particular, we represent Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, a civilian employee of the Defense Intelligence Agency and a reserve officer in the Army, and Mr. James Smith, a defense contractor formerly with the company of Orion Scientific Systems. Both men, as was heard, are sitting behind me and were prepared to testify today, and both worked for or with what is now known as Able Danger. I'm here to impart at least some degree of knowledge of certain aspects of Able Danger, what it accomplished, what it identified, and some crucial questions surrounding it. I have not had access to classified information on this. I haven't even had access to the full scope of unclassified information, so my testimony is not intended to provide a complete picture. I guarantee you I am only providing a couple of facets of a multifaceted diamond. And to be sure, most of my testimony is either hearsay, since I'm basing it on what I've been told by individuals associated with Able Danger or through the government, except to the extent I participated in specific events. My value, though, of the testimony doesn't come from the truth of the statements, but from the ability to use this as a stepping stone to go forward. This is not a partisan issue. There's enough blame to go around, and I'm confident once the whole story of Able Danger comes out, you're going to see that much of the cover-up that we're now seeing occur, particularly from the Department of Defense, is probably more of typical Washington, D.C., what we call CYA, than anything associated with the substantive work of Able Danger. I want to make it clear I'm not waiving attorney-client privilege. I'm basing my statements on statements my clients have made publicly with third parties or from other sources. Nothing, as you said, is classified. I should say I've been involved with the Defense Department and DIA for weeks of this case. Not once has any official in the department told me that they were concerned that my clients were saying anything classified. Let me tell you a little bit about Able Danger, and I'll try not to repeat anything that Congressman Weldon said. Formed in 1999, primarily working through SOCOM and LEWA, as you heard, which supports INSCOM. In the initial days, most of what they were doing was unclassified, and that's what I'm going to focus on. There were two phases. A first phase that went from 99 to mid-2000, and then mid-2000 into a little bit of 2001. That first phase was primarily unclassified, particularly with respect to Orion, and the second phase had much more to do with classified information, which we're not going to discuss today. In the simplest and most understandable terms, the aspects of Able Danger that led to the infamous chart and charts to be created dealt with the searching and compiling of open sources of publicly available information regarding specific al-Qaeda targets or tasks that were connected through associational links. No classified information, no government databases. The search and compilation efforts were primarily handled by the defense contractors such as Mr. Smith, who didn't even know they were working with Able Danger at the time. That information was then given to Able Danger, and they were to use it for whatever planning purposes they perceived. The starting points, as was said, 93 World Trade Center attack, 98 bombings, the New York City plots, Sheikh Oman Abdel Rahman, known as the Blind Sheikh. They took those names, they plugged them into the systems, and they created associational links like you see on the charts. By that I mean they looked for who was the sheikh associated with, person A, who was person A associated with, person B, and so on and so on. Think of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. This was the 6 degrees of Sheikh Rahman, essentially. Those links could have been nefarious, they could have been innocuous. Every link on those charts had a drill down capability. Those are from actual computer programs. So if you clicked on a name, there would be supporting data underneath. And what they would do is they would print out each of those charts and every bit of underlying data and hand those over to the Able Danger team members for them to use as necessary. We heard about the attempts to go to the FBI and the preclusion of that. If a wall existed, whether due to posse comitatus or some other regulations, that's a wall that this committee needs to explore fully within its jurisdiction, of course. By the end of 2000, for a number of reasons, documents were all destroyed. Not only by LIWA and those involved with Able Danger, which we'll hear a little bit more, but also with the Defense Intelligence Agency. I want to clear up two misconceptions, though, have been perpetrated within the press to some extent. At no time did Able Danger identify Mohammed Atta as being physically present in the United States. And no information at the time that they obtained would have led anyone to believe that criminal activity had taken place or that any specific terrorist activities were being planned. All they developed were associational links. It was impossible to tell, particularly using the unclassified work that was being used at that time, that those associations went anywhere further than that. Let me just go through a couple of points as the time would end, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Zaid, would you please summarize your testimony at this point?
For one, as you heard, Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer did meet with the staff of the Commission in Afghanistan in 2003, provided over information. They took that quite seriously. They tasked DOD to provide them information. Whatever DOD provided them, and that's a question for DOD, whatever was in there didn't indicate or support what Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer had told them. The issue that we have fought with the Commission, though, is if they had only gone back to Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer and asked him, how else could you support your information?
Talking about the 9/11 Commission?
Correct, sir. He could have identified for them the additional members of the team or those who were working with them, Captain Philpott, Mr. Smith. And at the time, if the Commission had looked into this in early 2004, the charts that had Mohammed Atta on it still existed. There was a chart in Mr. Smith's office. There was the chart that still should have been in the Defense Intelligence Agency because it wasn't destroyed within Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer's files until the spring of 2004. The same with the chart that Mr. Smith had, which was about the same size. You heard Congressman Weldon mention that Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer's clearance was revoked. It was suspended shortly after it was made known that he had testified or provided information to the 9/11 Commission. It was revoked just 2 days ago. I have been authorized, and I am happy to go through any details with respect to the security clearance revocation, what the allegations were, and what our responses were. What I'd like to submit in closing, the primary concern we should focus on as far as not who to blame for the obvious disconnect that occurred with respect to sharing information. We know that problem existed, it still does. Instead, the focus should be on identifying the current location of the other several dozen possible terrorists that were on that Mohammed Atta chart as to whether or not they are planning to commit terrorist acts against the United States today, as well as to reconstitute the successful work initially started by Able Danger. I applaud the committee's tenacity in pursuing this topic. Mr.
Zaid, are you just about finished?
It's got 2 sentences more, sir. I truly hope you will help educate the country to the truth and ensure that the images of those associated with Able Danger are not tarnished by governmental spin when they should instead be awarded with the accolades they deserve for their patriotism. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll try my best to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Zaid. Senator Kyle has other commitments, and I yield to him at this time.
Thank you very much. I'm at 10:45. I'm supposed to be someplace else, so I'll just ask you 1 or 2 quick questions. Obviously, it'd be better if we had the best evidence, the people who are directly involved that could give us the first or their direct knowledge of the facts. As a lawyer, other than the matters relating to the revocation of the security clearance with which you've been involved, do you have the first-hand knowledge of any of these facts? The things that you've stated here are they representations of what has been told to you by others?
Unfortunately, Senator, they are representations of what I've been told by others. Several of the team members, those associated, those on the Hill who have done investigations.
So the best evidence of that obviously comes from them. And
absolutely.
We would need to hear from them.
And all of them, as I understand, were willing to testify today.
Great. I appreciate that very much, and I regret that I have to go right now, but I'll perhaps submit some questions to you for the record.
I'd be happy to address
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much, Senator Kyle. Our next witness is Mr. Eric Kleinsmith, Project Manager for Intelligence Analytical Trading of the Lockheed Martin Company. A very extensive resume in intelligence activity, a number of commendations, including the Meritorious Service Medal, Army Commendation Medal, Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, and the National Defense Service Medal. Had been a member of the United States Army from 1988 to 2001 with the rank of Major. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Kleinsmith. Appreciate you coming forward under difficult circumstances, and the floor is yours.
As you said before, currently I'm an employee of Lockheed Martin Information and Technology. Although my employment with Lockheed Martin has nothing to do with my involvement in Able Danger, beyond my passion to continue to do this work as a private citizen. I do have an intelligence analysis training team of about 28 instructors. 5 of them are on the ground in Iraq today training intelligence analysis with data mining technology. My primary customer is U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command, to include the Information Dominance Center and the Information Operations Center and its extensions. I also teach a counterterrorism analysis course for INSCOM. From March of 1999 until February of 2001, I was an active duty Army Major and the Chief of Intelligence of the Land Information Warfare activity. My branch provided, as a typical mission, analytical support to Army information operations, but because of the data mining capabilities that we possess in the Information Dominance Center, we routinely provided direct analytical support to several combatant commands as well as other customers. And as Congressman Weldon alluded to earlier, one of our most prominent operations was in support of a data mining proof of concept demonstration for from our level, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Command, Control, Communications, and Intelligence, or ASDC-3I. That was called the JCAG project. It demonstrated how data mining and intelligence analysis could be conducted in a counterintelligence and technology protection capacity. That project ran through the latter half of 1999, and our results were ultimately subpoenaed by Congressman Dan Burton's office through the House Reform Committee on November 16th of 1999. In December of 1999, we were approached by U.S. Special Operations Command to support Able Danger. I assigned the same core team of analysts that worked the JCAG project, and along with Dr. Eileen Pricer as the analytical lead, 4 of us conducted data mining analysis on the Al-Qaeda terrorist network, coordinating with SOCOM and other organizations throughout that time. In the months that followed, we were able to collect an immense amount of data for analysis that allowed us to map Al-Qaeda as a worldwide threat with a surprisingly significant presence within the United States. In approximately April of 2000, from my recollections, our support to Able Danger became severely restricted and ultimately shut down due to intelligence oversight concerns. I was supported vigorously by both the LEWA and the INSCOM chain of commands, and we actively worked to overcome this shutdown for the next several months. In the midst of this shutdown, I, along with one of my analysts, Chief Warrant Officer 3 Terry Stevens, were forced to destroy all data, charts, and other analytical products that we had not already passed on to SOCOM related to Able Danger. This destruction was dictated by and conducted in accordance with the intelligence oversight procedures that we lived by. Ultimately, we were able to restart our support to SOCOM at the end of September of 2000. Additionally, the bombing of the USS Cole on October 12th brought U.S. CENTCOM to the IDC, and who became our primary customer until my departure from active duty on April 1st, 2001. I thank you for the opportunity to appear, sir, and understanding that I can only talk in an unclassified nature in terms of the operations and administrative coordination that was conducted, not the actual analytical results or anything that would jeopardize classifications.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kleinsmith. Mr. Kleinsmith, what knowledge, if any, do you have about the allegation of destruction of documents?
The allegation of destruction of documents is correct. I'm the one who deleted all the documentation that we had gathered at the IDC.
And what, you deleted the data?
Yes, sir.
Precisely what do you mean by that?
We had collected data from all of our different harvests, and we had two different sets. We had an unclassified or internet polls that we had done. We also had what we term as all source, and this is data that was combined together from both classified and unclassified sources. We also had printouts of charts that we had produced, as well as some I take that back. So charts that we had produced, as well as one chart or two that Orion Scientific had provided to us, but we had already gone beyond their analysis. So both soft copy and hard copy was deleted or destroyed.
Well, what kind of information was deleted?
Everything that we had.
Well, what was the essential substance of it?
We had done internet polls related to a preliminary analysis of Able Danger. And what I mean by that is we were trying to get a worldwide perspective of exactly where this organization function and operate just as a start. And that was in terms of Al-Qaeda.
And did part of that involve operations within the United States?
No specific operation in the United States. Only a presence that was known, and we were unable to get to the details for specific persons or information in the United States before we were shut down.
And when was that information deleted?
I deleted that data roughly May-June timeframe of 2000.
May, June 2000.
Yes, sir.
And did somebody instruct you to delete the information?
We were visited by the INSCOM's general counsel, and a man was named Tony Gentry. But he was only there 10 days prior to remind me of the intelligence regulations that we were operating under. And with that, the intelligence oversight regulation we referred to was Army Regulation 381-10. And in that, I brought a copy with me. We are allowed to, under Procedure 3, allows us to temporarily retain information about United States persons, may be retained temporarily for a period not to exceed 90 days, solely for the purpose of determining whether that information may be permanently retained under the other procedures. And so that while we were shut down, we were unable to do any further analysis, vetting of data, or investigation into the data that we had pulled. Because of that, the 90-day mark had hit, and he came back down to remind me again. And it was more of a friendly visit, not an adversarial visit. And that was actually when he told me jokingly, remember, just delete this data or you guys will go to jail. And that's, very funny. Understand you completely. We abide by the regulation, and so we deleted the data and destroyed the charts that were that we had also created.
When you say abide by regulations, what do you mean by that?
We had to abide specifically by the Army intelligence oversight regulations that said we could only retain this information for 90 days.
Is there some relationship between those regulations and the Posse Comitatus Act?
The Army regulation was in direct correlation with the DoD regulation 5140.R, which follows Executive Order 12333.
Giving me a lot of
I apologize.
Sequential documents. That's okay.
It's more of
Excuse me. Does any of it trace back to the Posse Comitatus Act?
Only from an intelligence analysis perspective, not from an operational or mission perspective.
Well, what do you mean by that? Intelligence but not operational?
It allowed us to...
I only was a first lieutenant, so you're going to have to explain it to me.
Yes, sir. It allowed us to conduct intelligence analysis and to incidentally collect information on U.S. persons. We didn't consider, or Posse Comitatus was never brought up at our level that we had worked at. We stayed strictly with AR 381-10.
Was there any reason for you to conclude that the deletion of these documents related in any way up the chain of command with all the regs to Posse Comitatus?
Not from my perspective or from my level, and I can't answer that fully, sir.
Mm-hmm. Are you in a position to evaluate the credibility of Captain Philpott, Colonel Schaefer, Mr. Westphal, Ms. Preisler, Mr. J.D. Smith, as to their credibility when they say they saw Muhammad Atta on a chart?
Yes, sir. I believe them implicitly from the time that I had worked with all of them, and everyone you had mentioned was part, and I had contact with during this time.
You had contact with all of them?
Yes, sir. I cannot corroborate them completely and say that yes, they saw it, because I myself do not remember seeing either a picture or his name on any charts. But I believe them implicitly. When they say they do, I believe them.
Well, my red light just went on, but I'm going to take the liberty of asking one more question. Notwithstanding my insistence on adherence to the red light by everybody.
Unanimous support from the committee.
That's extensive license, more than I really have as chairman. I have a report that you feel very strongly about this matter, so strongly that you were quoted as saying, and I want to know if this is an accurate quote, that every night when you go to bed, you believe that if the program had not shut down U.S. intelligence on these subjects, that 9/11 could have been prevented.
It's not completely accurate. What I had said is yes, I do go to bed every night, and other members of our team do as well, that if we had not been shut down, we would have been able to at least present something or assist the United States in some way. Could we have prevented 9/11? I don't think, I can never speculate to that extent we could have done that.
But you think you might have been able to glean some intelligence that could have been helpful along that line?
Yes, sir.
Senator Sessions?
Thank you. Major Kleinsmith, you're not a lawyer and have not studied these the origins of all these regulations. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes, sir.
You simply, as a officer, was bound by AR 38110, as you understood it.
Yes, sir.
And do I understand you to say that AR 3110, for whatever good reason somebody may have had for passing it, was the culprit that got you into this, or required these deletions? Or do you think that the deletions could have were not necessary even under the Army regulation?
Sir, I'm actually the one who made the decision to delete the documents, and so if it came to the point where was I ordered, I was ordered by whoever wrote the regulation, and I understood that the regulation was written before the internet, before data mining, and so it was a natural result. Yes, I could have conveniently forgot to delete the data, and we could have kept it, but I would have been in violation, and I knowingly would have been in violation of the regulation.
I'd just like to first say that you know, one moment we're giving the military a hard time because they don't follow the regulations, and next minute we give you a hard time for following the regulations. Is it your understanding from the legal counsel that you discussed this with legal counsel at some point before you deleted the information?
Yes, sir.
And they can confirm that in their view that it was your obligation to delete this, to comply with it. And who, at this time, who was Secretary of Defense?
I'm sorry, I think it was William Coleman at the time.
It wasn't Mr. Rumfeld ordering you to do any of this. Do you think, just from your perspective, having been there and worked on this, do you feel like that the regulation and the policies behind it should be modified to allow this kind of activity, and that it would not adversely impact our traditional view that the military should not be involved in domestic law enforcement?
And so again, yes, you're correct, I am not a lawyer. But I would only, if I had one recommendation to make, is that a review would be conducted that involved data mining and the technology and the capability. But I could not give you an answer on how it should be changed specifically.
Mr. Zaid, would you want to comment on that point, on what the policy ought to be? And
Sure, Senator. One of the questions.
You represent?
I represent Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer and Mr. Smith.
And these were the individuals involved in this data mining that had apparently come up with Mr. Otta's name.
Correct.
And information about that. As a lawyer, have you, recognizing our concern about, and I take this very seriously, the Posse Comitatus Act. I don't think we've blithely changed that act. But as to this data mining and the kind of things that they did, do you think we ought to change that policy?
Let me say first, understand that much of the data mining, and there are differences as to the technical definitions as to what exactly was happening with respect to that were done by the contractors, the defense contractors. The rules are somewhat different for them. They have no restrictions as far as what data they are maintaining. The other aspect is that we're not entirely sure what specific legal interpretations were being applied in this case, other than obviously with respect to the destruction on the Army side. I'd encourage the committee, if they haven't already, to try and obtain the undoubted legal memoranda that exists within the Department of Defense. This wasn't the first time, obviously, the issue came up. Plus, from my somewhat understanding of posse comitatus, I represent military officers all the time, but I've never been a military lawyer. You know, posse comitatus, of course, pertains to law enforcement activities of the military. In the aftermath of Waco, the Army took a PR hit because it had apparently helped support or provide activities more than they were supposed to with respect to the FBI raid on the Waco compound.
Well, let's talk about that. So the Army provided information that assisted ATF and FBI in the Waco activity. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I don't remember this specific.
But they were criticized for not staying within their role.
Absolutely.
So it's a matter you took serious. The military, Major Klein Smith, the military takes the rules they're given seriously.
Yes, sir. This is a requirement to be trained on intelligence oversights every year for every intelligence soldier, and it's tracked.
But there is case law, and there are DOD regulations that pertain to the sharing of information compiled by the military with law enforcement. What my understanding of Able Danger's activities does not appear as if it would have crossed over that line. Now, whether there's an inconsistency between this Army regulation and other DOD regulations in the case law is something this committee could obviously look at within its jurisdiction. It doesn't appear that there should have been any conflict. So it's not.
So to sum up, my time is expired. To sum up, you would say that
you can take some more time, Senator.
It may have been in violation of AR 38110, but not necessarily in violation of the case law or the posse comitatus theories that we've tried to operate on.
There's absolutely evidence of that. Plus, there's a concern that this was too zealously applied. Those within Able Danger were confident they actually weren't compiling information on U.S. persons. They were potentially people connected to U.S. persons. Again, I said they never identified Muhammad Atta in the United States. Apparently, the problem that came up was on the chart where his image was, he was listed under Brooklyn, New York, or something to that effect. It had Brooklyn. And those within the Army, either in the legal level or some of the policy levels, were apparently showing apprehension and concern that somehow that was then linking to data compilation of U.S. persons, whether that's U.S. citizens or individuals, foreigners here legally. Now, the other thing I should add as far as the destruction, Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer was the liaison between the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, and Able Danger. Because he was located here in Washington/Arlington, he maintained a extensive amount of files that pertained to the work that Able Danger was compiling in Orion Scientific. That data was not destroyed by Major Kleinsmith. That data, which may very well have included this Muhammad Atta chart, sat in.
Hello, just checking in here again. We're ripping this video because I think it is of extreme historical significance, and I don't think anyone has ever been able to see the layer beneath all of this Able Danger stuff until now. And I owe it entirely for many of you for having faith in me. And really, it's as capable as a researcher I am, it's because so many people just don't want to acknowledge a deeper truth or get deeper insights on 9/11, who are anyways on the other side of the microphone, have podcasts and so on. I wanted to address, again, this is from September 2005. Sorry about the typo in the title of the video, which I will correct. The topic of this file deletion. I've done videos, and believe it or not, it's hard to believe it's been years right now, years ago. But obviously no one there is capable of cross-examining this. And I'll go full screen, even though I haven't really cleaned up for it yet. Data, even then, in 2005, okay, especially something which is very important and classified, you just don't have one copy of it. Data needs to be backed up. You need to have a backup plan. A backup plan because sometimes computers break. Sometimes computers can get stolen. They can fall into the bathtub. There's a variety of things that could lead to that. And if the machine breaks, the machine itself could even have a software fault, which causes it to delete or destroy data within itself. So you need to have a backup copy. That doesn't mean just a second copy on the same computer. A backup means a full copy of data, files, or a file that is on another computer, or at the very least, a device that's not plugged in. In addition to that, when it comes to serious national security data, or even bank data, you need to expect the possibility that the whole site, the physical area, could be subjected to a flood, a hurricane, a fire. So you need to have a remote backup copy of it. That means that, at least back then, data regularly needs to be copied to something such as another hard drive or a tape, and then physically, with a truck, airplane, bicycles, moved to a different physical location. In addition to that, you may want to save multiple versions of a file because a file may change over time. You may update your file. You don't just have your resume. You have a copy of your resume, presumably, or your CV from last year, the year before. Maybe you took something out that you want to put back in, or you made a change when you made an edit to it. The concept of backup and archival means that deleting a file is very difficult. You need to look at all of the places that have a copy of that file at every instance of time. Who controls that? And if those copies, maybe they're on a tape. Tape is used a lot for high-density offsite backups. That could be co-resident with other data from other people on that same tape. Simply saying, as they do throughout here, the data was deleted, means nothing to someone like myself. There was a time I was one of probably less than 50 people in the world who had the highest level EMCST certification for backup, recovery, and archival, which also includes business continuance as well. That was a serious certification to get. And these are the things I think about. So you just don't click delete. You have to fetch every copy, every physical copy. And then you need to deal with potential passwords on all of those things. And in addition to that, when you delete it, well, deleting data doesn't mean it's unrecoverable. Most computers are designed in such a way that after you delete it, you could say, hey, I accidentally deleted it, and it will recover it for you if you ask. So you actually need a special computers and special capabilities to from the operating system, from your computing platform, to find the physical areas which are used to store that digital data and then overwrite them in such ways that the data can never be recovered. This is a very heavy-duty operation. And I made some videos about this because of the Datto emails, DATTO. I have no specific insights as to exactly how many copies of those deleted emails were made. However, when you really think about all of the operating systems which would have been used and the different types of media, underlying media that would have been used as these RAID storage systems, and so on, not to mention local backups and the fact that people are using phones and other local devices, surely with an honest attempt and a healthy budget, they should have been able to recover a lot of data. I don't know how much, probably not all of it, but a lot. And that is, no specific insights are required other than having worked in the data storage industry for 20 plus years. Now, it's been several years. I'm getting rusty, but these are general concepts which were chiseled all the way back in the 1970s when they were talking about the early days of file system. These concepts haven't really changed much. In fact, well, they really haven't changed much. So to simply say, here's this kid, and he deleted it, so I guess it's gone, it's a cover story. All right. Now, now maybe the data was never there, and he's just making the whole thing up. I don't know. Or maybe it is recoverable. I don't know. But you could spin a story that, the data really was there, and it was really sensitive, and I deleted it, and people will just have to believe you that it's there. And that is because of this nonsense of whistleblowers. As soon as someone says, I know a whistleblower, immediately stop listening to them. They are a liar, or they are not capable of actually communicating what a whistleblower kind of means and what it kind of doesn't. Technically, it's related to employment protection. But, this trickery, and you can see it goes all the way back to the early 2000s. You could be a liar. All you need to do is you have someone to coordinate with to say, hey, I'm a whistleblower. And everyone goes, oh, you're a whistleblower. You lost your job. We have to believe everything you say because you're a whistleblower. I could describe myself as a whistleblower, but I'm not. Yes, so when I worked at a company, big deal. What does that mean? Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean I should be listened to any more or less because of that. In these sob stories. Oh, and yeah, Curt Weldon, by the way, as you can see there in the background, his daughter is a D.C. lobbyist. He keeps talking about his daughter like she's a teenager, who's just trying to, get a degree in college, and they raided her dorm room or something like that. She's a D.C. lobbyist. She was a grown woman then. She's more grown now. He says that they ruined her life. Well, if she's still alive and working as a D.C. lobbyist, then I think she's doing okay. When you consider how many people have died of drug overdoses, how many young Americans have already lost their parents because of this drug epidemic. Weldon says, how do you know 2, 3, 4 people? I don't know anyone who died on 9/11. I know about at least 50 people, personally, who are lost during the drug epidemic, including, of course, our own son. So, again, where are we placing our priorities? I don't know anyone who even knows anyone who died on 9/11, other than Jessica Hockett, who happens to know the Lex Roll guy, sat next to him in high school, or some fantasy tale like that is what she told. But whatever the case, I had to break in this whole file deletion thing, and it's such a big part of the able danger. So what I'm going to do is at some point I will revive the videos. I'll clean them up and repost them for the Datto emails, because I guess it's going to be applicable here. These liars keep telling this stupid story about file deletion without any nuance at all about all the different permutations and all things that would be required to actually delete data. And if they didn't have backup copies, that alone is also a violation. And if someone happens to have old data that is beyond the retention policy is, that's also a violation. No talks about this at all. It's like what? The most important data in the world is just like one file on one computer, and that's it. Nobody backs it up. No offsite, no backup, no business continuity strategy, nothing. Come on.
In his office at the Defense Intelligence Agency, until sometime in spring of 2004 when DIA destroyed it. We have no idea why. By that time, Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer had been suspended and put on admin leave because his clearance had been suspended. DIA apparently claims that they sent him an email asking, well, what do you want us to do with all these boxes of documents? He never, I don't know if they did send it. I could tell you he never received the email. I don't understand why they would have destroyed any documents, particularly if they were classified and there was classified information within these boxes. Why would they destroy any documents, presuming he would get a fair shake at challenging his clearance suspension and ultimately come back to work within the DIA and hopefully use the documents again? So those documents were not necessarily subject to AR 381.10-10, and the DIA should be required to explain who destroyed the documents and why they destroyed them.
Good point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Sessions. Mr. Zaid, you are representing Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer and Mr. J.D. Smith?
Correct.
And they are present in the hearing room this morning?
They are, sir.
Okay.
Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer's in uniform and Mr. Smith is right next to him.
Would you gentlemen mind standing, please? Okay, would you, for the record, identify Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer?
Sure. Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer is to the left, both are to the left in the uniform, of course, and Mr. J.D. Smith is here in his business attire.
You may be seated, gentlemen. You speak as their counsel?
Yes, sir.
And they have consented to your testimony?
Yes, sir.
And why are they not permitted to speak for themselves?
Because the Defense Department has prohibited it. I received both phone calls and a letter from the Defense Intelligence Agency as well as the Department of Defense General Counsel's Office specifically prohibiting Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer from testifying. Mr. Smith admittedly has not been explicitly prohibited, but being an individual who still works within the classified environment with numerous agencies of the federal government, I advised him it would be preferable not to testify until the classification issue with the department is taken care of.
And was
I used to know somebody who said that they worked in that department. You know who you are. Tisk, tisk, tisk.
any effort made to have you not testify?
I'm not aware of any. No indication from the Department of Defense or DIA that I not testify. And as I said earlier, never have been told, and I work with these attorneys over in the agencies all the time, never have I been told that there was any concern that Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer specifically had been saying anything classified within his public comments. And I have routinely been told by agencies of the federal government, particularly when we represent intelligence officers, when one of them has potentially crossed the line, and we have been told to reel them back.
But you're saying that there's never been any suggestion either as to Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer or Mr. Smith that the DOD was concerned about the disclosure of classified information?
At least with respect to what they have publicly stated to the press, to the committees, etc. Without a doubt, I should say two things. J.D. Smith's contract with Orion through whichever part of Defense Department engaged him was completely unclassified. No questions about that. Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer and Able Danger, of course, did have access to classified information, but the work that prepared or led to the creation of the Muhammad Atta chart was unclassified.
And the information which has been in the public domain, which is what this committee was looking for, was not classified.
It's all of our indications that nothing was classified and could certainly have been spoken to today and then elaborated on in executive session.
Obviously, it would be preferable, as Senator Kyle pointed out, to have the witnesses testify firsthand, but in the absence of that, we can hear hearsay. What would Lieutenant Colonel Schaefer have testified to had he been permitted to do so?
Predominantly, he would have testified to the fact of the work that Able Danger had been doing, both in the certainly unclassified environment, that they had created numerous charts that had dealt with Al-Qaeda, one of which had identified Muhammad Atta, had a photograph of him. That photograph was not the same photograph that we have all seen in the news, not a photograph released by a U.S. government agency or the 9/11 Commission. It was a very grainy photograph. He remembers it specifically because of the essentially evil death look in Muhammad Atta's eyes and his narrow drawn face. Of course, the name itself didn't necessarily mean anything to them until after 9/11. He conversed with other members of his team, found that they had gone to meet with Mr. Hadley and turn over the chart, thought, well, my job is taken care of, the information has been passed. He would have talked about the capabilities that LIWA and the contractors were undertaking and the successful enterprises they were doing. That was revelation and novel within the intelligence and military community. He also would have indicated that finally he came and he met with members of the 9/11 staff, to include its executive director while he was on active duty risking his life in Afghanistan, that he had told them that his team had identified 2 of the successful cells of 9/11 to include Atta. That statement, of course, is in dispute by the 9/11 staff that were present. There were also DOD staff that were present there, who have not come forward and have not been questioned so far as we know. He also would have indicated that after that he made, Mr. Zelikow gave him his business card and said, I want you to call us when you get back to the United States so we can follow this up. He did so in January of 2004. He called the commission, said, Mr. Zelikow told me to call. I'd like to come in and give more information. They never called him back. A week later he called again and was told, that's okay, we don't need to talk to you.
The red light went on during your answer, Senator Sessions.
I just briefly, Mr. Chairman, would follow up Mr. Klein-Smith. We found in the Patriot Act work that we did that there were clear prohibitions, unbelievable prohibitions on the sharing of information, such as an FBI investigation that involved a grand jury could not share with the CIA matters, and vice versa. CIA felt they couldn't share information in certain ways. I guess I want to ask again, and did you think when this lawyer talked to you about your requirement to destroy this information, that I believe you said you felt that was the advice was consistent with the existing Army regulation, did you not?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Zaid, were you saying that you felt your clients did not feel that the existing regulations required on the deletion of that information, or at least some of it?
From my discussions with those involved with Able Danger, they were well aware of this concern, and they felt they had put in and put into place numerous safeguards that would ensure that that concern would not rise to a significant level of necessitating the destruction. They were all ensured. They said they were taking, in fact, numerous steps beyond what they felt were even necessary to allay any concerns by the attorneys. But obviously, as you heard, at the end of the day, I guess the attorneys won out.
And, well, I think it's important for us to review these matters. First thing I would like to say, and I think it's very important for the American people to understand, somehow there's a belief in this country that we give regulations and directives to the military and that they think we don't comply with them, that the military does not comply with them. I used to have to teach in the Army Reserve and certify every year or every other year that I taught the Geneva Conventions to Army Reserve privates in a transportation unit. And the military does what we tell them to do. And when we have these kind of crazy rules that do this, I think it's us in Congress that really deserve the criticism here first. And second, if a lawyer was too aggressive in requiring deletion of things that they shouldn't, I think we need to look into that. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back on my time to you.
Thank you very much, Senator Sessions. To say just one final question. Again, we'd like to hear from Mr. Smith, but we are precluded. If he were to testify, what would he say?
Mr. Smith would have indicated that he was tasked by individuals associated with Able Danger, again not knowing it was Able Danger, to compile unclassified information that they then put into charts like Congressman Weldon had brought today, looked somewhat similar, some were that size, some were smaller, containing massive amounts of data, that these were associational links, that at least one chart in particular, which he in fact kept on his office wall until the summer of 2004, when it had been destroyed after he tried to move it for an office move and then junked it, had Muhammad Atta and potentially, according to other team members, he doesn't recall this, 3 others of the 20 hijackers of 9/11. In fact, as well, he would have made one mention that at some point in time, he was not there at this time, that government federal agents, armed federal agents, came to Orion in around March or April of 2000 and confiscated many or much of the data that Orion had compiled with respect to this contract. They never obtained his data or his charts because, given that it was unclassified, they actually were in the trunk of his car. And so that's why he was able to maintain these charts. After the summer of 2000, or even the spring of 2000, that contract ceased to exist, so he no longer participated in any of the efforts.
When you say Muhammad Atta, is it the Muhammad Atta who turned out to be the hijacker?
Yeah, without a doubt, his recollection is that, again, by the photograph, and he obtained the photograph through a subcontractor that Congressman Weldon mentioned, bought through, and he understood it to be a foreign source. And it was the look of this photograph. It wasn't the same photograph that we've all seen. And he, post 9/11, when he had this chart on his wall in his office, would bring in anybody who would come by and say, look what we had compiled. And others, they would be shown, here was the photograph of Muhammad Atta, and he would just shake his head, you know, what if?
Do you know where the chart is now?
The chart, unfortunately, was destroyed. I'm not sure what the paper is of those, but many of the charts were on a type of paper, almost like tissue paper to some extent, from my understand. And he had it taped to the wall, and when he tried to take it down, it had become so torn and tattered after, at that time, 3 years, that he threw it out.
Anything further, Senator Sessions? Thank you very much, Mr. Kleinsmith. Thank you very much, Mr. Zaid.
Thank you.
And in absentia, although present, thank you very much, Colonel Schaefer and Mr. Smith. It's pretty hard to be an absentia and present at the same time, but you are. We now call our third panel, Mr. Gary Bald and Mr. William Dugan. Mr. Gary Bald is Executive Assistant Director of the FBI for the National Security Branch, appointed on August 12th of this year. Branch created at the recommendation of the Commission on Intelligence Capabilities of the WMD Commission, responsible for integrating the FBI's national security mission with the Director of National Intelligence. Been in the FBI since 1977, has a very extensive laudatory record there. A Bachelor of Science from the University of South Carolina, and a Master's in Forensic Science from George Washington University. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Bald, and we look forward to your testimony.
Got it now? Okay, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Chairman. I have submitted a written statement, if I could ask that it be made a part of the record, and I will briefly...
Without objection, it will be made a part of the record.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Senator Leahy, and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to update you on the progress the FBI has made since 9/11 in sharing information with our partners in law enforcement and the intelligence community. As you requested, I'll focus my remarks on collaboration with the Department of Defense. I'm testifying today in my new capacity as Executive Assistant Director of the National Security Branch of the FBI, which was established on September the 12th, pending final administration approval. Created in response to the President's directive to implement the recommendations of the Weapons of Mass Destruction Commission, the National Security Branch combines the resources, missions, and capabilities of the counterterrorism, counterintelligence, and intelligence elements of the FBI and in doing so will help us build on the tremendous strides that we have already made since 9/11 in strengthening our intelligence and information sharing capabilities and coordinating with other intelligence agencies. Before 9/11, our ability to share information was hampered by legal and procedural restrictions, often referred to as the wall, that separated intelligence and criminal investigations within the FBI. Those restrictions contributed to a situation in which our relationships with other intelligence agencies on counterterrorism investigations were driven by case-specific needs. Since 9/11, the passage of the Patriot Act and other major legal developments eliminated the wall between criminal and intelligence investigations within the FBI, and these actions removed real and perceived barriers to coordination among the FBI and other intelligence agencies and changed the way the FBI conducts international terrorism investigations. In addition, the FBI now places great emphasis on producing intelligence reports and disseminating them through our partners in the intelligence and law enforcement communities. Our policy is to share by rule and withhold by exception. To ensure that this policy is implemented, we have created a senior-level information policy sharing group to provide guidance within the FBI for internal and external information sharing initiatives. The FBI has also developed a national information sharing strategy as part of the Department of Justice's Law Enforcement Information Sharing Program, which aims to ensure that those charged with protecting the public have the information that they need to take action. There are three components of this strategy. The National Data Exchange, or what we refer to as NDEX, which will provide a nationwide capability to exchange data from incident and event reports with other agencies. The Regional Data Exchange, or as we refer to it as RDEX, which will enable the FBI to join participating federal, state, tribal, and local law enforcement agencies in regional full-text information sharing systems, and our Law Enforcement Online, which provides a web-based platform for the law enforcement community to exchange information. The FBI also participates in a variety of interagency centers, working groups, and committees that were established to improve information sharing. In each of the FBI's 56 field offices and in most major United States cities, we now have a joint terrorism task force, which combines the resources of the FBI, other federal agencies, with the expertise of the state and local law enforcement agencies in those areas to prevent acts of terrorism and investigate the activities of terrorists in the United States. To support the joint terrorism task forces throughout the country and to provide a point of fusion for terrorism intelligence, we also created the National Joint Terrorism Task Force. Department of Defense is strongly represented in the Joint Terrorism Task Forces and on the National Joint Terrorism Task Force. The FBI also has a significant complement of personnel working at the Interagency National Counterterrorism Center, which integrates the federal government's intelligence and analysis and presents a comprehensive view of the terrorist threat for the President and other senior policymakers. The FBI is proud of its efforts in partnership with the Department of Defense. We're working together on numerous fronts to share information to support the global war on terrorism. And as an example of our joint activities, the FBI's Criminal Justice Information Services Division has been working with the Department of Defense's Biometric Fusion Center to store and disseminate data collected by military troops deployed overseas. The data consists of fingerprints, photographs, and biographical data of enemy prisoners of war or individuals of interest as national security threats. The FBI currently has special agents assigned as liaison officers to several Department of Defense combatant commands, and additional FBI personnel are embedded with the Department of Defense in military operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Guantanamo Bay. Department of Defense and FBI are also collaborating on the Foreign Terrorist Tracking Task Force, which uses analytic techniques and technologies to enable terrorist identification and tracking. In addition, the two agencies share information as participants in the Terrorist Explosive Device Analytics Center, which coordinates and manages a unified national effort to gather and technically and forensically exploit terrorist improvised explosive devices worldwide. With the intelligence gathered throughout these and other partnerships, as well as our own investigations, the FBI produces intelligence products that we disseminate to the intelligence and law enforcement communities, primarily through 6 information sharing networks: the FBI Intranet, Intel Link, Top Secret, Intel Leak Secret, Law Enforcement Online, the Homeland Security Information Network, and the Secure Automated Message Network. Over the past several years, the FBI has significantly increased the number of intelligence products disseminated via these networks. The primary route for the Department of Defense components to receive FBI intelligence products is through the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Mr. Bald, could you summarize your testimony at this point, please?
I will, sir. Thank you. Through the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is the primary distribution list for FBI intelligence products. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman and members of this committee, the FBI has made significant progress in our efforts to share information with our partners in the intelligence and law enforcement communities. We have established policies and developed tools that make it easier for us to disseminate intelligence and provide access to those who need it. And we are working collaboratively on many fronts with the Department of Defense and other agencies to develop the capabilities we need to succeed against the threats of the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bald. We turn now to Mr. William Dugan, Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense Intelligence Oversight. Mr. Dugan is a retired Air Force colonel, had served as a Minuteman Missile Combat Crew Commander, Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Florida, and a law degree from the University of Kansas, also a graduate of the Army War College. The floor is yours, Mr. Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Senator Sessions and members of the committee. It's my privilege to appear before you today. I'm Bill Dugan. I'm the Acting Assistant to the Secretary of Defense for Intelligence Oversight, and I'm here to discuss the Intelligence Oversight Program in the Department of Defense and also to talk about an information sharing. I am responsible to the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary for the DoD's Intelligence Oversight Program. And the purpose of the Intelligence Oversight Program is to enable DoD intelligence components to carry out their authorized functions, while at the same time ensuring that their activities that affect U.S. persons, United States persons, are carried out in a manner that protects their constitutional rights and privacy. Now, I've used the term United States persons, and I would like to define it because it is an important term. It's a broad term. It refers to more than just United States citizens. The term also includes permanent resident aliens, corporations incorporated in the United States unless directed or controlled by foreign governments, and associations composed of permanent resident aliens and United States citizens. So you can see it's broader than just U.S. citizens. We operate under Executive Order 12333, entitled United States Intelligence Activities, which was issued by President Reagan in December 1981. The DoD implementing regulation is DoD 5240.1-R, entitled Procedures Governing the Activities of DoD Intelligence Components that Affect United States Persons. This DoD regulation was approved by the Attorney General and was issued in December 1982. So these are the Attorney General approved guidelines for the DoD intelligence community regarding activities that affect United States persons, and they have been in place for more than 20 years. The Office of the Assistant to the Secretary of Defense was established in 1976 to implement the original executive order, which was one issued by President Ford. And that was in response to the investigations, including those done by this committee, that revealed the misuse of intelligence assets, both DoD and non-DoD, to collect information on civil rights protesters, anti-Vietnam War demonstrators, community and religious leaders, etc. The lack of clear rules, mission creep, and the lack of meaningful oversight caused an abuse of the constitutional rights of United States persons by defense intelligence and counterintelligence personnel. The result, President Ford's first executive order and the one we operate under currently by President Reagan, 1981. I would like to describe how the process works regarding the collection of United States person information by DoD intelligence components. First, no one in DoD intelligence has a mission to collect information on United States persons. What we have are missions such as foreign intelligence, counterintelligence, counterterrorism, signals intelligence, and the like. In the course of performing our mission, we run across or find information that identifies United States persons. That is when the rules in the DoD regulation that I mentioned, 5240.1-R, kick in, the Attorney General approved guidelines. If the information is necessary to the conduct of the mission, as I just described, for example, counterterrorism, and if it falls within one of the 13 categories prescribed by the executive order and the DoD regulation, then the intelligence component can collect it. The 13 categories, I won't list them all, they are in my prepared remarks, but the ones most likely to be used in the war on terrorism are information obtained with consent, publicly available information, foreign intelligence, counterintelligence, and threats to safety from international terrorist organizations. If the intelligence component is unsure if the information they have obtained is proper for them to keep regarding U.S. persons, the intelligence oversight rules allow them to temporarily retain the information for up to 90 days, solely to determine whether it may be permanently retained. And thus we have intelligence components who have properly collected U.S. person information and in their holdings. Finally, if an intelligence component is in receipt of information that pertains to the function of other DoD components or agencies outside DoD, such as the FBI, the intelligence component can transmit or deliver the information to them for their independent determination whether it can be collected, retained, or disseminated in accordance with their governing policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dugan. Mr. Dugan, you were present during the entire hearing today?
Yes, I was.
I didn't hear you object to any classified information being presented.
Sir, I listened to your reading of the statement from your legal counsel regarding my responsibility to object if there was classified information revealed. My knowledge of able danger is very limited. The information that I heard discussed by the previous two panels, based on my limited knowledge of able danger, did not cause me to rise and say that I thought classified information was being revealed. Had I believed so, I would have done so.
Okay, so you didn't hear any classified information?
No, I didn't hear what I believed to be classified information.
Well, we're not looking for anybody else's belief. Is there anybody else present from the Department of Defense here today?
I have some folks from the OSD Legislative Affairs, but I don't believe they're in a position.
But it was your job to object if you heard something you thought was classified.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Is there anything in posse comitatus which would have prevented the Department of Defense from telling the FBI about an al-Qaeda cell and Mohammed Atta?
No, sir, I don't think so. I don't think this is a posse comitatus issue. I think this is an intelligence oversight, executive order 12333 compliance issue. The Army regulation that the previous speaker referred to, Army Reg 381-10, is an implementation of the DoD regulation, which is an implementation of the executive order. And that is what they followed. Posse comitatus, I don't think, bears on this.
Was there any basis under posse comitatus for the deletion of materials as testified by Mr. Kleinsmith, or the destruction of other records relating to Mohammed Atta and the charts?
I don't think so under posse comitatus.
Any basis for the destruction of those records or deletion on any ground?
Well, perhaps under the intelligence oversight rules and the 90-day retention determination period that I spoke of. That is under the DoD guidance, the Attorney General approved guidelines. If information identifies a U.S. person, the intelligence component concerned has 90 days to determine if they have a reasonable belief that it can be related to one of the 13 categories in Procedure 2 of the DoD directive. The Army directive is the same.
The rather extensive record for this committee today, albeit by hearsay, to some substantial extent, Congressman Weldon's testimony and the other testimony has established the existence of intelligence information in the hands of the Department of Defense, including the identity of Mohammed Atta, That evidence having been presented, and if factually ascertainable, did the Department of Defense make a mistake in not telling the FBI about that prior to 9/11?
Not having reviewed the evidence that...
Well, you were here today and you heard all the testimony.
Yes, sir, I was.
You heard a lot of testimony that there was a cell uncovered on Al-Qaeda, and that Muhammad Atta was identified, the Muhammad Atta who later turned out to be a ringleader. Now, I don't know whether it's true or not because we haven't had the first-hand testimony, but we have to accept what we can get. That is for a first hearing. We may have some more hearings.
Certainly.
Secretary of Defense is coming in to brief the Senate this afternoon at 4 o'clock. He may have some extra time. He may be able to lend some substance to what we've heard here today. But all we can do is accept the testimony we've heard. Now, accepting that testimony, if the Department of Defense knew about an Al-Qaeda cell and about Muhammad Atta, the ringleader, wasn't it a mistake not to turn that over to the FBI?
If the INSCOM folks, following the regulation and their intelligence oversight rules, found that the information was properly collected and collectible, then it is under the Attorney General approved guidelines. They can retain it and disseminate it. And the dissemination under Procedure 4 of the regulation would be lawful to the FBI.
Should it have been disclosed? That's my question. Your last answer was circuitous and not to the point. Should it have been disclosed if it might have prevented 9/11?
If it was properly collected, yes.
Well, was it properly collected?
I don't know, sir.
Well, you say there's nothing that you heard about which puts it at variance with the Posse Comitatus Act.
Correct, but I haven't heard testimony, whether, and from the Army, and I understand they're not here and the reasons for that, but as to what they collected, how they collected it, and why they determined it was not properly collectible, and why it then could not be retained and then disseminated.
Do you know why the decision was made not to retain it?
I assume, based on the previous testimony of the previous panel, and from what he said, was that the 90-day period had run. And since the 90-day period had run, they had not made a collectability determination that it could fit into one of the 13 categories, that it was excluded.
Since you're the only representative from the Department of Defense here, we can only ask you to respond to the committee and to make a determination as to whether, number one, the Department of Defense had information about an Al-Qaeda cell and Muhammad Atta, the ringleader. That's question number one. Did they have that information? If so, was there any reason under Posse Comitatus why they could not disclose it to the FBI or others intelligence agencies? And question number three, was it a mistake not to make that information available to prevent 9/11 or perhaps contribute to the prevention of 9/11?
Mr. Chairman, with respect to your first question, did we have information that identified Muhammad Atta? I've heard the testimony here, but I don't know.
Well, the question was, since you're the only representative of DOD here, the committee would like you to find out the answers to those questions.
Very good.
We had the secretary here, we would ask him. If we had somebody with knowledge of able danger, like General Shoemaker, who was very intimately involved in it, he's not too far away, he's the chief of staff. He was confirmed by the Senate the last time he was up. If we had somebody who knew more about the matter, we'd ask him. And I understand that you were sent over in a very limited capacity with perhaps a calculation that you didn't have this information. But those are the questions which the committee would like to have answered.
Yes, sir.
And if you would undertake the task of finding out the answers or having your superiors find out the answers, the committee would appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Senator Sessions.
Mr. Dugan, so Mr. Dugan, to get this ancestry of how we get into these walls that make life in government more difficult. There were church hearings and other abuse hearings that resulted in President Reagan, President Ford, and then President Reagan issuing directives to constrain the activities of the Department of Defense in things that could be considered domestic investigations or domestic law enforcement. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct. There was also an intervening order from, executive order from President Carter.
And as a result of that, DOD Regulation 12333 was issued.
I believe you are referring to Executive Order 12333.
All
that
right.
was issued by President Reagan.
And you referred in your remarks here to a DOD regulation that governed the issue, and is that the regulation from which Major Kleinsmith referred when he talked about AR 381-10?
Yes, sir, I believe.
So the Army implemented that DOD regulation, and that became for the officers and men and women in the Army their binding authority.
Yes, sir, that's correct. All the other services have a similar regulation, as well as the Defense Intelligence Agencies.
And is your understanding that that regulation really was not founded on the Posse Comitatus Act, but some other principle or concern to the executive and legislative branches that led to that?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
What are there any statutory provisions that underlay this executive order and the AR 381-10?
The provisions in President Reagan's executive order grow out of the abuses committed by DOD and non-DOD intelligence organizations during the 60s and 70s, as I explained, and investigated by Senator Ervin, Senator Church, the Church Committee, Representative Pike, as well as the Rock.
Well, I guess
so. It's a fear that you have the military collecting intelligence on, let me use the term U.S. citizens, but U.S. persons within this country.
I think that's a big issue. I think it's an important issue. I don't dispute that, and I'm not for eroding that principle in any significant way. But the chairman is, I guess, I think we need to ascertain whether or not there was any statutory requirement that resulted in 381-10 that impacted this particular matter, or was that the result purely of an executive order which could be changed by the chief executive?
I believe it's the result of the executive order. I do not believe it's a Posse Comitatus statute issue.
And you're not aware of any statutory requirement that requires this?
No.
Now, with regard to, see if I can follow up on the chairman's question about sharing this information. There was this 90-day rule that the major and others, I guess, felt they were confronted with. What do you have an explanation of why they couldn't just call Mr. Bald at the FBI and say, we can't hold these documents anymore, we turn them over to you? What would be the difficulty in doing that?
We're a lot smarter now than we were in 1999 and 2000, and we think we could do that. Provide that information to the FBI and say, you need to review this with your authorities in mind to determine whether it's lawful for you to keep. Now, we are faced with that same situation when law enforcement information is given to us for us to look at. And we look at that information in the light of the executive order and the DOD directive and say, is it proper for us to keep this information? Is this of intelligence value to us? And make our decision and determination in accordance with the DOD directive or the Army regulation.
Well, so those decisions were made, and I guess we'll follow up, and the chairman has asked what about this ultimate destruction of the documents? Was that called for under the regulation, or was that necessary?
The 90-day rule is what is referred to as a collectability determination. I have this information. I don't know if I have a reasonable belief that relating to U.S. person information, relating to U.S. persons, and they have this 90-day period within which to make a determination. If the determination after day 10 is this does not relate to one of the 13 categories that I've just described, then the 90-day clock stops. But they have a full 90 days to make that determination. Once that 90-day period goes by and they have not made the information, then it's not properly collected.
It's deemed not to be properly collected, and under criminal law, and the police officer improperly collects something, he does not have to destroy the evidence unless but he can't utilize it.
We destroy it.
So you destroy it. So if you delay and haven't made a determination in 90 days, it's to be destroyed. Well, could it not be shared? It has to be shared. What if it's improperly gathered, so it can't be maintained?
Again, they're not getting into the details of data management, backup, archival, offsite.
Can be shared, for instance, with the FBI, as I indicated earlier, for them to review it with their authorities and to make a similar decision or determination whether for their agency they can. Now, why wasn't it done in this case? I can't tell you. Information sharing obviously has increased in significance and importance since the 2001 attacks. We are doing a better job of sharing information both from law enforcement to intelligence and intelligence to law enforcement.
And it's as much as I can appreciate how this William Dugan is handling this inquiry, it's still way off in the weeds of talking about the hijacker. Right? It's the same thing as it's COVID, where you have several hundred, at least within the United States, several 100,000 additional deaths above baseline of drug overdoses. You know, we used to be at 20,000 a year, not 110, 120,000 a year, fatal drug overdoses. Hospital protocols, errant use of oxygen, depriving people of antibiotics, the population demographics, how would you say, pyramids, which we're going to have more people dying anyways. All of these things, creating the perception of a pandemic, and people only talking about well, what kind of sniffles did patient zero have? How much was revealed on that one document that was never actually published, or that one project that was never fully funded by the EcoHealth Alliance Group. Instead of talking meaningfully about most of it, they're so hyper-focused on one thing. And here the hyper-focus is, oh, did you know Muhammad Atta? Did you not know Muhammad Atta? Was the name on the disk? Was it not on the disk? Was they delete the file? Could the DOD share it? Did the FBI have it? Muhammad Atta, and this guy with this, clearly they used eye makeup on the picture to make him look as wild and demonic as possible. It's all a show. So, it doesn't matter who hijacked the plane when you consider the fact that the planes did aeronautical maneuvers that were not possible by any hijacker, much less or any pilot. So what are we talking about here? But this is what it's all focused on. Now, I reached such a level of disgust with Curt Weldon over here being such a deceiving person that I know that just the same, even though this Defense Department official is continuing, although he's not saying there were hijackers, but he is definitely participating in the story and the act and keeping things and allowing things to stay focused on the hijacker. But I do like him handing Weldon his lunch here. Yeah, I think Weldon is generally frustrated here. but no progress has been made at all. And what this shows is that keep in mind, okay, and I didn't know this. I've heard this phrase "able danger" before. I've heard of this Lieutenant Schaefer before. I've known. Every once in a while, I'll turn into some other channels like, okay, what are they talking about these days when it comes to researching 9/11? And they always, within seconds, they're just right back to this whole, the hijackers and the CIA and the FBI and this and that, and they didn't share the data, able danger and declass. Like, what are we talking about here? No progress at all. Even if they were wrong, this is 2005. They've had 20 years after this. 20 years, a fifth of a century has passed since this event. And no progress at all. You know why? Because they're starting off focusing on the wrong things. The wrong things totally. So I think this is more or less going to wrap it up. I'm 2 hours and 54 minutes in. I wanted to close out with one other short video here, okay? And it's a little bit unrelated. I really should have this video be just the archival, but every once in a while, I'll play a longer old archive video like this, and I'll let it serve as both an archival, a capture, as well as some narration. Because I was doing some thinking today about which of these mythologies do we need to break first? Some people say, once you disprove the moon landing, everything else, falls apart after that. And I'm not so sure. I'm not a biologist, so I'll never be able to be, taken seriously as someone. I know someone like Jonathan Cooey can and will be taken seriously regarding his statements about the inability of RNA to pandemic. But, with respect, I don't have a PhD, so that statement even is going to bear less weight when coming from me. What is the one thing that I should really focus on? And I think the fact that September 11th, 2001 was going to be a biological terror event is important. And I think it's one that's more practical and pragmatic for the time being. But so much of what we're seeing in hearings like this on domestic issues, we just seem to be arguing about mythologies. We're arguing about things and threats which can't really happen, where serious problems are happening right now, causing an enormous devastation. And I may be shooting for the moon a little bit on this one here. Scenes from Dr. Atomic. This is a New York City play.
The creation of the first nuclear bomb by scientist J. Robert Oppenheimer is the unlikely inspiration for Dr. Atomic, an opera written by Pulitzer Prize-winning composer John Adams in 2005.
The atomic bomb really is, in a sense, the constellation of everything America stands for, both what makes us great and what makes us a problem in the world.
That is such a profound statement. I don't know if everyone feels that way, but I think a lot of people do. When you think of America, you think of the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb is America. And if nukes don't exist, that means America itself is nothing more than a myth. That's all we are. We are a lie that was told that if you dig up enough heavy metals, squeeze them together, the whole earth can disappear. It's a mythology. And ever since that lie was told, things have been getting worse year after year after year after year. I think America died ever since we've been trying to hold on to that lie. I don't believe America could ever reach its potential being defined by that. Now, the United States is a very young country. It's still sort of an experimental country in many ways. It's still a country that I like to believe hasn't even really found itself yet. But I believe in it. I don't believe other countries are bad, okay? But I believe that this is part of my DNA and, my mission. And to think that it's been tarnished and dragged down to yet a mythology. And all of these other mythologies are kind of built on this. 9/11, Curt Weldon himself, Mr. Suitcase Nuke Pusher, Mr. Missile. Yeah, you just pack enough of that powerful plutonium in a suitcase and all of lower Manhattan can disappear. That's what you need to be afraid of. Or you need to be afraid of gain-of-function viruses and what people do in their garage. They can kill everything on Earth if they just wind up bending the wrong protein the wrong way on the wrong day of the week at the wrong time in the presence of the wrong animal. These stupid, we have more power than God mythologies. I think that they all need to be attacked. I mean, isn't that the most responsible thing to do as a scientist or an engineer? And I respect the fact that there are people who can't just come out and say it for a variety of reasons. I understand. I understand just people in positions of power who, just can't just say everything they know. I get it. But I think as far as a citizen goes, I don't want my country defined by this stupid idea anymore. And if it's such an important concept that it is defined what the United States of America is and isn't, then I definitely think it's something worth tackling. And do a list. You will find a near 100% correlation of people who genuinely despise the United States of America and think that we need to ridicule everyone that questions nukes. It's almost as if they all want the United States to remain on this path. I think it's a fight worth fighting. I think it's one of the only fights that will actually free the United States and allow it to be what it should be for the people that are here now. Repeat what he says again.
In 2005.
The atomic bomb really is, in a sense, the constellation of everything America stands for, both what makes us great and what makes us a problem in the world.
Wow. Dr. Atomic, in the making of Dr. Atomic, was made by director Peter Kuran. Yesterday I was saying Kuran. It's Kuran, Kuran, who also did special effects for Star Wars, who also did special effects for, I think, Ghostbusters, who also did special effects for Starship Troopers and about 300 Hollywood movies. And not to mention, because of his ability to create special effects with light, has been recruited all the way since the mid-1980s as a specialist in helping the United States, whatever you want to call it, archives, Sandia Labs, and so on. Every time they find an old film of a nuke that they lost that fell behind the refrigerator, Peter Kern would be able to help out and restore it to its full glory. What a wonderful way to just keep making new videos that look more and more realistic of nukes. To just say, hey, it looks like we found another one, Peter Koran. Can't blame him. It's just a job and a challenge, I'm sure, to make it look as realistic as possible. So, I know. It's related. That's why I had to show it. Okay, it's late. It's time to sign off. Thanks for listening. And we're just going to keep killing it. We're just going to keep killing it here. Thank you, guys. Love you much. See you tomorrow.